Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the D and WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the second part of WhatIf Deku's and Bakugo's parents were both killed when they were 5. All credits for this video go to their respective authors. So please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Eraser had gotten an emergency call while he and Present Mike were halfway through lunch. They both got up and went to the meeting room. Vlad and Midnight were already there. Cementos, 13, and Snipe would follow behind. Soon enough the room was full with all the UA. Teachers, all but Shifter, that is. Midnight spoke first. So what's the emergency? Did it have to do with the recent event today? Vlad spoke next. I was about to ask the same question. Did we find out why that alarm tripped off all of a sudden? Principal Nedzu spoke up. All in due time. We're just waiting for the guest of honor to arrive. 13 looked at Nedzu. Guest of honor? You mean Shifter, right? Since he's the only one not present. Not a few seconds later, Shifter came through the door and immediately walked to Nedzu's side. He pulled out a flash drive as he turned off the lights to signal for the screen projector to turn on. Efficient and to the point. That's how Shifter worked when it came to these sorts of things. Alright, as you all know, there was a breach in security not too long ago. I did some digging and found out that one of UA side entrances was destroyed. Ectoplasm was the first to speak. That can't be right. UA is incredibly durable, to say the least, for someone to destroy one to this doors. It would take a strength quirk. Yes, that was my initial theory. Shepard immediately answered, but after a bit of analyzation I discovered that the metal of that door was broken to a microscopic level. Typing a few buttons, a few pictures of the cage was shown, and it revealed that the metal had been broken down as if it was beginning to rust away. So whoever did this has a subtle destruction quirk. That's an incredibly rare quirk combination. I take it you have some more theories as to why this happened, Shifter? Cementos questioned. While he was aware that Shifter knew of OFA, the two never really talked as much, mostly due to their personalities not mixing well, but Cementos had always been interested and respected Shepard and just how well informed he was with everything there was out there. Correct, but it would be far easier to show you rather than explain. The next slide was a video of the events that has just happened. From Shepard looking at the gate to him making his way to the server room and to his meeting the villain that had disappeared with a warping quirk. When I looked further into it, I'd realized that man was looking through the servers for the schedules of several heroes, particularly towards All Might. But I can't verify how much information he'd acquired before I caught him in the act, unfortunately. Eraser had finished listening to Shifter and gave his response. I would like to point out that a warping quirk was also involved. Those are extremely rare, to even say the least, probably second only to a healing quirk, so it's safe to assume that he either has 2 quirks or he had helped. I'm more so leaning towards the latter, but since we have no information on this person, it leaves more question. And something tells me you believe he's gonna target All Might. Shepard's nod confirmed Eraser's statement. Well, that narrows it down to practically nothing. There isn't a villain alive who wouldn't want to target All Might. Nedzu had the floor. His eyes had a gleam in them, and the timing is coincidental, given how he's supposed to appear for tomorrow's rescue training mission. 13 and Eraser are scheduled to oversee their training. Seems as though the destruction of the gate was a distraction to sneak into the school. But by the looks of it, we're all left with a choice: what to do about tomorrow's event. You mean to cancel tomorrow's event? Snipe replied. That is one option, yes, more so out of concern for the safety of the students. If someone is targeting All Might, it would be best not to involve them. This could be a ploy to draw All Might into a trap. Present Mike would give the next responses. We should at least hear what 13 and Eraser have to say. It is Class 1 that'll be affected with this choice after all. 13 would think for a second. Well, I wouldn't want to endanger any of the students, but they've been looking forward to tomorrow's event. Rescheduling would also interrupt everyone else's scheduling too. But from what Eraserhead has told me, this year's students have progressed far more than any other previous first week. I will be honest, if there's a possibility that villains do attack, my quirk won't be as effective in battle. Eraser and All Might would do most of the fighting, but having the latter with us, there wouldn't be any better guaranteed safety for the kid. However, being a hero is more than just knowing how to throw a punch. I rather they know that now than later. Being a rescuer definitely taught 13 to think analytically and on her feet. There was more to rescue work than meets the eyes. Taking into account the rescued physical and psychological health while having to deal with environmental problems added its toll. But she'd always managed to push through it all and encourage other students to use their quirks to also help people, not just for combat alone. After her explanation, Eraserhead added his comment. First, I agree with 13 that I do not want to risk the safety of the students in any regard. They're only first years and they all have yet to get a full grasp on their quirks. But I am inclined to believe that an attack may happen tomorrow. The timing of this distraction is far too coincidental, and I certainly don't believe in coincidences. All Might is only ever scheduled once a week after all. A key issue is the fact that there's a warping quirk involved. Those kinds of quirks are far too few to properly analyze. But if someone is bold enough to attack UA, then they must have a strong quirk user at their side. I don't wish to deny these students a chance to learn, but he had to think for a good while. Was he being paranoid? Would an attack actually happen? The timing of everything was beyond convenient. He knew that a rescue session would help the students grow. Not everyone became a hero to fight. Some wanted to rescue others or even help with other works such as community services or teaching. I've always tried to push all my students to near breaking points, eliminate those that aren't truly serious about being a pro. You all know I try my best to prepare my students for the harsh reality of the world. It's not as black and white as we wish for it to be. After Eraserhead's comment, only the ticking of the clock could be heard. Everyone was stumped to do next. But Nedzu broke the silence. Shifter, how do you think we should proceed? The entire room looked at him. Unfortunately, I'm not that. But Nedzu interrupted him. You're not the best candidate to decide what to do. I highly doubt that, but allow me to ask you this. As a teacher, hero, and a father, how do you think we should proceed? Fuck the rat, put Shifter in a tight compromise. He sighed before answering. As a teacher, a rescue would open up new doors for anyone who'd want to focus on being a rescuer. As a pro, they may be young, but they need to realize that hero work isn't as sunshine and rainbows as the media presents it. And as a father, I trust my sons, but I'd never want to put them in danger like that. After Nedzu listened to his explanation, the teachers went back and forth with what to do. They argued for what seemed like hours despite it only being 30 minutes. Vlad, Midnight, Hound Dog, and Mike were against allowing the students to go. Power Loader, Cementos, Snipe, and Ectoplasmic favored to allow the rescue to continue. Meanwhile, Eraserheads, 13, Nedzu, and Shifter were undecided on how to proceed at all. But they made a compromise of sorts after another long 30 minutes. The rescue would continue, but Shepard would come along and assist. Shepard gave Nedzu a spare watch of his, and that watch would allow Shepard to call an emergency signal for help. They were also told to not inform the students on the possibility of a threat by villains. Should that happen, Shepard was very adamant that the pros handle it. Right now, they could only hope nothing would occur tomorrow. But nothing ever truly goes as planned, does it? Tuesday, 9:17 a.m. Aizawa class was all lined outside as the bus approached. He was still nervous about the possibility of yesterday's meeting, but he was hoping it was all just paranoia. 13 had already gone ahead to the USJ. No implications on whether there would be an attack so far. The drive there was filled with chatter amongst the class, talking about how they're gonna perform today, all with excitement in their voices. Aizawa was truly praying that nothing would happen today, that yesterday was just paranoia, and that these kids would be safe. The drive there was good and well. Sue asked Izuku about his quirk, noticing its similarities to All Might's. But Izuku reassured her that it wasn't the same, given how there are countless quirks with very similar effects: fire manipulation, body augmentation, transformation quirk, etc. Sue dropped the subject, but Kirishima added how cool it was to have a flashy quirk, commenting how his quirk wasn't anything good, but Izuku told him that his quirk would be amazing for close quarters and taking hard blows from enemy hits. A lot of the class would begin to question how on earth he was Bakugo's brother. But Izuku immediately told them, because we are. Now stop acting so surprised. He's my older brother and nothing's gonna change that. Izuku really wasn't getting mad at the fact that there's still confusion on being friends with Bakugo. But he could tell it was slowly starting to aggravate Bakugo, and he's not gonna have an Aldera incident or people misjudging him for his attitude. Class 1 arrived to their destination when all go a sudden hello Class 1, I am here. All Might shouted once everyone got out of the bus. The class was surprised. They were told only Eraser and 13 would be their instructors, not All Might. Well, it looks like his appearance is definitely helping with the moral today, Shifter said, finishing his mug of coffee. Shepard Sensei. Class 1 was speechless again. 4 teachers for today's event. The entire class was booming with excitement. Most of them were talking amongst themselves on how awesome it was going to be to do today's lesson plan. Once the class settles down, 13 addressed Class 1A. I'm sure you're all surprised by the appearance of 2 additional teachers. Well, Shifter and All Might have volunteered their time to help with today's course. Today you'll enter the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ. You'll be trained on how to handle different accidents and disasters, landslides, buildings falling, underwater rescue, and more. Furthermore, I'd like you all to know a bit about myself. My quirk is called Black Hole. I can suck anything I want into nothingness. It's a dangerous quirk that could hurt others, so I've dedicated my life to use it to save people. I know Eraserhead and Shifter have helped you gauge your limit to a degree. In All Might's course, it helped you realize how effective your quirks can be under proper training. But remember that quirks may define you, but they're not meant to hurt other people. I hope after today you'll all have a better understanding of how to use your quirks to save and help others. Thank you all for listening. Shepard gave her a quick applause for her speech, and some of the class followed with the applause. A good and thorough explanation. 13. and an excellent way to improve today's performance. Well, we shouldn't keep the students waiting any longer now, shall we? And the teachers guided all the students to inside the building. It was massive, from a forest to a lake, and even a small mountain. This place was well built. While Class 1 was marveling at the sight, Izuku took a look at Shepard. He couldn't place his finger on it, but he looked more tense than usual. More so, he noticed he brought his mask to school. That was the first time he'd done so, as he usually keeps that mask at home. He turned and saw that Bakugo was also eyeing their father. They could both feel it. Something was off with Shepard. As they approached him, he immediately tensed up when Shepard's gaze was directed at the center of the area. Fuck. The teachers all froze. And not a moment after, the lights flickered. Soon all the light bulbs exploded, the room only being lit by the many windows and the transparent ceiling. A portal began to open at the center, and from it a crowd of people came through it. They were all following a person with multiple hands around his body, and to his left and right there were two massive purple bodyguards. They both had an exposed brain and a teeth-filled bird beak. Kirishima looked down. Is this like a special introduction to the rescue? No, this isn't a drill, those are villains. Eraser immediately put his goggles on. All Might by his side. 13, get the kids out of here and to safety now, Eraser had yelled. Shifter immediately clicked his watch, hoping that Netsu managed to get the emergency beacon and get all the pros here. He'd know it would be at least a 30-minute wait, but they were gonna hold out until then. Shepard stood by Eraserhead. Izuku, Katsuki, you two are the representative and deputy. Follow 13 seconds example and get the class out of here. The two of them didn't hesitate to follow Shepard's orders. They both knew Shepard was full on dad mode voice, and that meant shut up and listen. A very raspy voice spoke out. Well, looks like the intel was worth getting shot. All Might is here, and seems he has a few NPCs with him. Wonderful. Killing all those extra NPCs would definitely break the symbol of peace. The boy gleefully spoke. Namu, kill All Might. Without a second wasted, one of the Namu charged at All Might. All Might charged at him back, tackling the thing outside the glass windows. Oh, looks like they're gonna take it outside. That's fine, we made a spare one just in case. One of the Namu stood by the raspy-voiced boy, almost like a guard dog protecting its master. Class 1 had tensed up. Something was strong enough to fight a tackle from All Might. Why are you all standing here? Go, Shepard yelled. His two sons were pulling everyone by the shoulders, helping 13 guide them to the exit. Shepard put his mask on as Aizawa leapt from the flight of stairs down. Just one hero, as if he can take us down easy. But before any of them had a chance to use their quirks, Eraser used his. That opportunity was all Eraser needed to incapacitate the attacking villains. Hold on, that's Eraserhead. He can cancel out your quirks, just be looking at you. Some of the villains backed away, but not all of them, as if that'll stop me. Let's see if your quirk can affect a hedomorph like me. An attacking hedomorph was making its way to Aizawa, but before he knew it, Shifter came in and gave him a hard knee to the face, following it up with hard punch to the stomach. Your first mistake is thinking you'd be able to get close to him. Your second mistake was thinking that you could all attack UA without any repercussions to yourselves. We've taken measures, ensure you all won't get off so easily. Shifter spoke, his voice modulator making his voice echo. With that, the two underground heroes got to work fighting together, hoping to buy time for UA to arrive. Class 1 and 13, but we're about to reach the boat, were stopped by a purple mist-looking man. Trying to escape, not going to happen. The students stopped in their tracks. 13 was at the head of the class when she about to use her quirk. Oh, you think you can stop me, 13? Unfortunately, this warp villain would open up a portal behind 13, causing Quirk to destroy half of her suit, incapacitating her. A powerful quirk. Unfortunately, I already devised a method to defeat you with minimal effort. Now whose? But Bakugo would immediately jump at the villain, aided by Kirishima. Both used their quirks, but their attacks phased through him. Well, if you children wish to be heroes, then I will treat you like one. Soon the warp villain would expand his entire body. A large gust of energy would envelop multiple students, transporting them to different locations of the area. Some of you managed to escape the blast radius. No matter. Today you'll all die slowly. Izuku POV. Izuku could feel his body being enveloped by a purple mist. It was a huge rush as he tried to reach for some of his classmates, but he wasn't able to. The next thing he knows, he's falling down into a lake. He immediately puts his respirator on, thankful for the idea. He started to swim up to the surface when he saw some villains attack him from underwater. He was about to get attacked, but suddenly felt something wrap around his waist. The next thing he knew, he was on a ship with Asui and Shinso. Taking a second to collect himself, he took off his respiratory. You two all right? We were about to ask you that. We saw you fall down from the sky and hit the water surface pretty hard. Me and Asui, Tsu, call me Tsu, please. She interrupted. Sorry, me and Tsu landed on this ship and then she jumped in to save you. You sure you're good though? Yeah, I'm good. A bit startled, but I'm good now. Is it just us, the three of us, or are there any others? Asui shook her head. By the looks of it, no. Looks like it's just the three of us at the moment. Ribbit. Izuku, you have a plan already, don't you? Izuku nodded his head a bit. So it looks like these villains have quirks perfectly suited for water environment. But for some reason, despite their numbers, they haven't made any actions against us. You think they're gonna wait until one of us goes into the water? Shinso asked with some frustration. Asui looked down. We could stay until help arrives. Remember what that warp villain said, they have intention to hurt us. Waiting may not be the best option if I think about. Because I think we have the advantage right now. Shinso raised an eyebrow. We're outnumbered and they have better quirks for this scenario. Who do we have the advantage? Exactly, our quirks. Why would that warp villain transport Sue to the Florid District? That alone proves that they don't know what our quirks are. They have to be cautious. Shinso gave a small grin. We know their quirks, but they don't know ours, huh? Nice. Asui nodded. So what's the rest of your plan? Did you already figure out a way to best use our quirks? Izuku gave her a nod, something like that. Sue, can you jump far? And if Shinso used his capture weapon to latch onto you, would it stop your momentum? She took a second to think, tilting her head to the side. It shouldn't. No, wait, do you plan on having Shinso spin me with his weapon? He smiled when she figured that part out. Yup, then could use your tongue to bring him in close so you two can swim farther away. You up for it, Shinso? Shinso looked back at him. Thankfully, I've gotten better with this capture weapon, so I should be able to grab Tsu so we can do a throwing spin combo. But what about you, Izuku? What are you gonna do? He was about to answer but soon felt the ship get hit. Guess they were tired of waiting. My main focus will be to buy you both time. I'll be able to catch up with my quirk. Green lightning began to flicker over his body as Izuku ran on the ship. Hey asshats, you just gonna sit there or are you too scared to fight a bunch of kids? That definitely did the trick. Some of the villains jumped on the ship and began to chase Izuku. A few tried to sneak attack him, but thankfully he was able to dodge and give them a few punches and kicks. He turned around and saw that Asui was indeed jumping. Shinso would follow her and they managed to pull the spin combo. Izuku took a second and knew what he had to do. It was gonna hurt, but thankfully he knew his hero costume would take the brunt of the damage. OFA 12%. Remembering the first time he'd ever use OFA, he'd send a shockwave with his left hand that would hit the water, causing it to part. He was cautious to make sure Tsu and Shinso were far away from the blast. Most of the villains were then sucked in the water, and Izuku took this opportunity to jump and putting his respirator on again. He used a small 2% of OFA on his legs to swim far and fast, eventually able to catch up to Tsu and Shinso. They all got out of the water and hid in some nearby bushes, all three of them catching their breaths when Shinso broke the silence. Good plan, class rep. You saved our bacon back there. Izuku gave a panted laugh. Thanks, was really lucky we had Tsu here. She really made the plan possible. Ribbit, no problem. That was a pretty strong shockwave. Didn't know you could do that. It's not that I can't, it's just if I use my quirk too much, it damages my body. Thankfully, my costume was built to minimize the backlash. But right now my left hand may not be as strong as my right hand. Also, sorry if I spooked you guys with that shockwave. I'm still trying to learn how to incorporate that technique with group battles. It's all good. So what's the next course of action? Stay here and wait it out until help arrives? Ribbit? I'd like to say yes, but I think it would be better if we tried to move to the center plaza. This earned a very worrisome look from Tsu and Shinso. The truth of the matter is he wanted to help his father. As much as he would disapprove of that action, he couldn't just sit back and let his dad fight those villains. Sure, Aizawa was with him and they'd been on countless missions, but deep down Izuku was still worried for Shepard. But he couldn't tell Shinso or Tsu the truth since they didn't know about his relationship with Shepard. Look, remember how hurt 13 was? We need to get back to the plaza and see if we can help her out. Shepard and Aizawa-sensei, they've been through a lot of team-ups, but we need to help our teachers too. It's a dangerous move, but if we stay here we may get caught. On the other hand, the teachers wouldn't approve of us helping them out like that. Shinso scratched the back of his head, but we did trust you to have a plan and it did lead us to safety. If you think it's best, then I'll follow you. They wouldn't want us putting our lives in danger like this, but Shinso is right. You came up with a plan and we all got out of there safely. Izuku was extremely grateful to them. Okay, then let's. Before he could finish, he felt a hand over his mouth. He turned around and immediately relaxed. Hey Deku. Bakugo POV. Bakugo and Kirishima had been fighting several villains, dodging and effectively using their quirks to take out any villains that approached. They'd been constantly fighting before finally taking out a final villain with an invisibility quirk trying to launch a sneak attack. Kirishima took a breather before turning around and seeing Bakugo walk away. Hey, wait up man, don't you think we should stay together? Bakugo didn't turn to face him. You do what you want, shithead. I'm gonna head back to the main plaza. This has Kirishima confused, but why the main plaza? Bakugo stopped and finally faced him. That purple mist fucker is their one and only exit out of here. We take him out and the villains can't escape, it's that simple. That was part of Bakugo's plan. The other is he wanted to go and help his dad. Bakugo, like Izuku, never doubted his abilities as a pro. But he would be damned if he was gonna let the old man fight without some extra backup. Oh okay, yeah, that's a pretty good plan, but don't you think we should try and find the others maybe? I mean, not everyone has combat quirks like us. We should try and help them out. especially since we're party to blame for acting so hasty. There was a brief silence before Bakugo responded. You really think Shepard and Aizawa haven't prepared us to fight? Have you forgotten all of last week's training? All the team-ups and maneuvers we'd learned thanks to those two? We've been taught by some of the best. If the other villains are as weak as those fuckers we just fought, then the rest of the class should be fine. Kirishima could only grin. Wow, you really do have faith in our class. That's so manly of you, Bakugo. No wonder you're the deputy. So strange given how you act all. Die. Bakugo rolled his eyes. You moron. Elm always calm and rational. Tusk, look, we've already wasted enough time. He turned around. You can follow me or go find some extras, but I'm heading out. He got out of the building. He was on the 4th floor, so he jumped and landed safely using his quirk. Kirishima would soon follow him by quite literally jumping down and landing face plant on the ground. He got up and gave Bakugo a smile. Bakugo didn't know what to make of Kirishima. All of last week he'd been nice to Bakugo but couldn't figure out why. Maybe the nerd's infectious happy attitude was getting to him, but he didn't feel the need to tell Kirishima to piss off, especially since Kirishima held his own back there. The two of them were making their when they heard a loud shockwave nearby. Bakugo turned and saw a lake, and he instantly recognized that technique. It was the same move Deku used the first time he ever got his quirk. He knew his brother was close and managed to catch a glimpse of him dive in the water. Come on, shit hair, I just saw Deku. He ran with Kirishima by his side. Damn, your brother did that. Remind me never to piss either one of you off. They ran, and eventually Bakugo saw Izuku. Not wanting to startle him or alert any potential nearby villains, he carefully approached him. He got close to him and put his hand over Izuku's mouth. His brother turned to face him and he immediately relaxed afterwards. Hey Deku, Kakin. Izuku didn't waste any time tackling his brother with a hug. Kirishima caught up. Hey guys, nice family reunion, huh? Shinso gave a snorted laugh. Yeah, for those two at least. How'd you find us anyway? Well, we saw a massive shockwave, and Bakugo immediately recognized it as one of Izuku's moves. And damn Midori, you've been holding back on all of us, huh? He gave a small little laugh. Izuku let go of his brother. Well, to be fair, this quirk of mine can be really taxing. But is it just you two? Kirishima nodded. Yeah, just me and Bakugo. He was thinking of going to the main plaza. Izuku turned his head and looked his brother in the eyes with a nod. He knew their reasons for going to the plaza was the same. Funny enough, the three of us were gonna do the same. But with the 5 of us, I think we may have a better shot at this. Izuku went on to explain the plan. Izuku and Bakugo would help Aizawa and Shepard. The other 3 protested, but they both went to explain how their quirks were best suited for battle. Yes, they ran the risk of getting hurt, but truth of the matter, the two didn't care. They knew they've been trained by the best for 9 years, but they weren't out to prove themselves. They wanted to help their father. After the other 3 begrudgingly agreed, Izuku explained the rest of his plan. The key to winning was Shinso. If Shinso could get the warp villain to respond even once, then the villains wouldn't have any means of escape. During the distraction, Kirishima, Tsu, and Shinso would make a break for where 13 was. Kirishima would be the main line of defense while Tsu would be camouflaged, letting her get any enemies off guard. It was a decent enough plan, so they made their way to the central plaza carefully. Thankfully, they hadn't come across any other villains, so looked like the coast was clear. The two gave each other a reassuring look as they neared the plaza. Okay, everyone remember that. But a body was flung and landed on their direction near their feet. The 5 of them looked down, and what they saw caused Kirishima, Shinso, and Tsu to step back. Izuku and Bakugo didn't move so much as an inch. They could only see in horror who was thrown and landed at them. Right below them was the limp and bloody body of their father. Eraser and Shifter had been fighting back to back, taking out as many villains as possible. It was easy work for them, but for some reason their leader wasn't moving at all. As a matter of fact, that purple-looking creature wasn't moving either. This had Shifter on edge. More than likely this villain was waiting for both of them to tire themselves out. But Shepard wasn't holding back right now. The blows he was dishing out definitely left their mark on each villain that he knocked unconscious. They had at least 30-40 villains left. The main issue was their numbers. There were too damn many, to say the least. Shepard has used the last of his tranquilizers, and he was down to 1 bullet. Eraser was definitely getting tired. His quirk just wasn't suited for long battles. Final boss time. All of a sudden, Shifter saw the leader rush in and try and attack him. He was dodging each blow, and he was trying his best to grab him. Shifter soon dodged out the way, but the villain kept going at it. His fighting style was wild. He lacked defense, but it was his hands that were the main focus right now. His quirk, it must require physical contact to use. This was further proven true when a villain was hit with his quirk after Shepard dodged one of his attacks. But despite all that, he wouldn't stop his attack. He kept pressing onward. Shepard then shifted to Eraser's position as they both took a breather. So final boss joined us, and there's still too many villains. Any ideas? Eraser asked. One, but it'll involve you fighting by yourself for some time. He seems extremely focused on me. Eraser stood up. Do what you have to. I trust you, Shifter. Eraser wasted no time in continuing to fight the other villains while Shifter saw the hand villain stare at him. You're really interested in trying to kill me. I suppose you're holding a grudge since yesterday, Shifter asked. The hand villain laughed. So that's what you sound like. Your voice reminds me of the puppet from the Saw series. And me holding a grudge. Oh, that's an understatement. Your tranquilizer dart went deep into my neck. It still hurts very much. Oh, I forget my manners. The name's Shigaraki. I suppose there's no harm in telling you since you'll all be dead soon. But first I'd like to ask you something. Is this some sort of negotiation? I avoid doing that with villains. Shigaraki laughed again. Oh no, not a negotiation. See, think of it more like a proposition. See, I noticed the way you fight. Your blows, they feel lethal, aren't they? Shepard only stood there in silence, but that was all Shigaraki needed. No need to answer. I can tell from your fighting style that you're holding back. The question is why? Why would yourself hold back? Why would you waste your time with these so-called heroes? Why not put your skills to a place that would actually be to your benefit? Shepard's plan was working. He was stalling for time for the others to arrive. Thankfully, his mask hid where his field of vision was. He was constantly switching between looking at Shigaraki and Eraser, and where that might be. With you, you threatened to kill my colleagues and students. You truly believe I'd join anyone with those kinds of intention? Shigaraki just laughed willingly. No, but we could take you in by force. We still have the advantage, you see. Besides, I can tell you're different from all these fake heroes. You and Eraserhead both actually. I think he's pretty cool. I mean, look at him. He's still standing despite the numbers being against him, and that quirk of his. So unique, he can take away someone else's powers. What I wouldn't give to have that power in my hands. And you, to be fair, I didn't even know you existed up until yesterday. You're both underground heroes, aren't you? I can tell because you two are so different from the heroes I've seen on the news. They only care about publicity, but you two didn't even hesitate to fight off again an army of villains. Is there a point to all this, or you are just begging for an autograph or something? Shigaraki stopped in his tracks. Now see, maybe I could get your autograph in blood, but like I said, I'd rather have you on my side. I wasn't expecting anyone to catch me yesterday, but there you were in a matter of minutes. You then didn't even hesitate to shoot me either. And here you are again. It's as if you had a plan for this. If you did, though, you just put these students of yours in danger. Not very heroic of you, which is why I think you're pretty cool. You put your own students in danger for. But Shifter didn't let him finish that sentence. He shifted fast into his proximity and gave him a hard punch to the face, causing him to hit the ground hard. Shigaraki scratched his face. You hypocrite. A hero doesn't hurt people, but you hurt me. NOM, you kill him. Namu, that was what the purple creature was called. It did indeed charge at him fast. Just as it went for a punch, Shifter changed positions with Shigaraki, resulting in him getting hit instead. Fuck, that quirk of yours is really annoying. Shigaraki stood up. One of his arm hurt. You really aren't afraid to use others for your plan, are you? Just then Shigaraki let out a hysterical laugh. Oh, how cool is that? A hero with the mind of a villain who uses others as his pawns. Now you have to join us. Tell you what, if you join us, I'll kill your student quickly. Sound like fair deal? No. Shigaraki was met with silence, something that didn't sit well with Shigaraki. Well, if you're gonna insult me like that, Namu, kill Eraserhead. Namu charged past Shifter and towards Eraser. It ran through some villains, but thankfully Eraser was able to dodge out the way. Shifter immediately teleported on top of the Namu Red. Using his gloves, he charged red lightning on its exposed brain. The creature reeled in pain as it fell its knees. Shifter got off it as both Eraser and him approached Shigaraki, but for some reason he was still laughing. True, there were some villains left, but they'd lost their biggest weapon. Or so Shifter thought. He turned around and saw them. Namu attacked them. Eraser. Shifter didn't hesitate to shift Eraser out of there, but unfortunately that left him vulnerable. And that was all the time that was needed for the Noma to grab him and slam him on the ground. Smash him, glue his body to the ground. Namu. Shigaraki gleefully screamed, and Shepard would be on the receiving end of multiple hard blows. His mask was broken and his right arm took a hard hit. Eraser could only watch as Shifter was beaten to a pulp. By the time the Namu was done, Shepard was barely conscious. Such a shame you didn't take up my offer. Namu, throw that hero away and focus on Eraserhead. Shepard's body was thrown to a few nearby bushes. His eyes were faint, but he could vaguely see. Unfortunately, his vision was failing him as he slowly drifted away. 9 years ago. We are here to save you, civilian. A 6-year-old Izuku and Bakugo would shout. Both were wearing All Might onesies. Shepard was laying down on the floor when Izuku ran to him. Quick, Kak, and take out the bad guys while I heal the injured. On it. Bakugo would use his small explosions on some random plastic cups that had angry faces drawn on them. Izuku, on the other hand, would put a bandage over Shepard's head. Civilian healed. Soon enough, all the plastic cups would be burned. All the bad guys have been defeated. We did it, Deku. They both high-five each other while Shepard was still laying on the ground. Yeah, you two young heroes saved me. They gave Shepard the biggest grin ever and immediately dog-piled on him. Of course we saved you. Me and Deku are gonna be the best team ever. Bakugo smiled, his arms wrapped around Shepard's neck. Yeah, the best hero team ever. And it's all gonna be thanks you, Shepard. Izuku cheerfully replied. Shepard gave them a small chuckle. Well, I guess I have a lot of work to do now, don't I, kids? How about I make you some breakfast? You two heroes need your energy after saving a civilian. Want some pancakes? That question was met with an instant yes. As Shepard got up, the two of them latched onto him like a baby koala to its mom. They always liked how Shepard would never complain about lifting or holding the two of them for an extended period of time. Being in his arms, it always felt safe. They knew Shepard wouldn't let them go and would always be gentle with holding them. You know, Shepard, when we're older, we're gonna protect you for real. Me and Kakin are gonna save a lot of people, but when we're stronger, we're gonna watch over you. Shepard smiled, ruffling their hairs and holding them close. Well, if I have the two best heroes in the world protecting me, I don't have much to worry about. But for now, my job is to raise you both to be the best. The two kids buried their faces on his shoulders, giggling and still grateful Shepard has done for them this past year. Thanks, old man, but we promise we'll protect you when you can't protect yourself, Bakugo told him. We promise. Present time. Izuku and Bakugo's entire world fell silent. They didn't notice that the others had approached Shepard to see if he was breathing or had a pulse. There was a ringing in both of their ears. They couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Their father was hurt bad. Their father was hurt bad. Shepard, the man who always had a plan, the man who always reassured the two that he'd never push himself too far. Shepard, the man who was always there for them at their best and worst moments, the man who always looked unbeatable, was hurt bad. The two of them couldn't take their eyes off Shepard's body. They were holding back calling him Dad. They were holding back tears. They were holding it all back, but then they saw something else. They began to hyperventilate. Their quirks activating on their own. Sweat fell from their body, and they could definitely feel a sharp pain in their chest, but then they saw it. Further down to the plaza, they saw the Namo. Its hands were bloody, and right next to its feet were pieces of Shifter's mask. Rage consumed them, and the two bolted at that creature. Izuku's entire body was now flashing off strong sparks of green lightning. Bakugo's arms were fire stronger explosions than before. OFA. 15%. Izuku gave that thing a hard punch to the face. It backed up a few steps, but that punch was followed up by a cluster of strong explosions. But they weren't done. They continued their assault using their teamwork and years of knowing each other helped out, but this thing. Bakugo may only have one gauntlet, but that's all he needed. Izuku was still using only 10% of OFA, but that's all he was going for at the moment. He didn't want to injure his body, not after what he just saw. This thing, however, was taking all their moves, and the best they could pull it off was stunning it. At one point, they'd managed to blow off one of its arms, but to their surprise, the Namo regenerated its missing limb. Both heard an applause. Well, you two seem to have actually farmed a bit. Too bad Nomus level difficulty is much to handle. Shigaraki had gleefully spoken. Namo, make their pain slow, just like that other wannabe hero. I'll be focusing on taking out Eraser. They were ready to fight, but before they knew it, a body had crash-landed near them again. This time it was the other Namu that attacked All Might. Or rather, it was the broken body of the Namu. Its arms and head were missing. And not a few moments later, All Might landed in front of the two boys. All Might had turned and had seen Shifter's body. He looked down and saw Izuku and Bakugo. Leave the rest to me. You two look after Shepard. And those words, look after Shepard, brought them back to reality. Their breathing slowed down, and then ringing in both their ears stopped. Izuku stopped glowing and Bakugo stopped using his explosions. The world did become clearer for them to see. Thanks to All Might, the anger in them subsided. He was their idol and personal teacher. It's no surprise that All Might could call both of them down in this rough situation. Both realized that they had to protect their dad. All Might may not be in his prime anymore, but he's still All Might. They had faith in his abilities, so they did as they were told and ran back to Shepard's body. Sue, Kirishima, and Shinzo hadn't moved. They decided to stay and protect Shepard. When the two boys ran to them, they all had looks of concern for them. They'd never seen them so angry or act without haste. Before they could ask them anything else, they felt some strong shockwaves. They looked to see All Might was fighting the Namu and was pushing that thing back. All Might wasn't just pushing the Namu back, however. He was winning and countering every last blow. It may be able to fight back against All Might, but it had none of All Might's skills that he developed through constant years of training and fighting. After 200 consecutive punches, All Might sent the Namu flying away from the USJ building. The remaining villains were shocked to see All Might's power. He'd beaten these Noma twice in a row with minimal difficulty at best. No. You cheated. You used a cheat code. There's no way you could have beaten Nama without cheating. Shigaraki began to scratch his neck and his face. He stomped his feet like a child. Not having things go way was definitely affecting him. Kurogiri appeared next to him soon after. We need to retreat, Shigaraki. They looked up and saw that the UA teachers had made it in time. Our priority is the safety of our students, Netsu ordered. Shigaraki was 554. All his plans were ruined today. As he saw the teachers take out the remaining villains, he turned to All Might. You ruined everything. You were supposed to die. The symbol of peace was supposed to have been broken. But these NPCs, they got in the way. You cheated. Heroes don't cheat. They're supposed to play fair. What gives you the right to be a hero? Who gave you the right to play God? You ruined everything, everything. I hate you, All Might. This was supposed to be my victory. Fine, Shigaraki, we need to. Shut up, Kurogiri. Shut up, shut up, shut up. If the Namu couldn't do it, then I'll. Shigaraki soon felt something touch his jaw, turning his head ever so slightly to see Shepard was right next to him. His legs looked like they were about to give out. His right arm was dislocated and his face was bloody and bruised, but he could see Shepard had his gun pointed right at him. You talk too fucking much. Bang! Shepard pulled the trigger, blowing Shigaraki's jaw and tongue right off. All Might, Eraser, the students and teachers all stood there shocked. Shocked that Shepard was standing, but shocked that he didn't hesitate to blow Shigaraki bottom face off. Shigaraki immediately fell down in pain, blood spewing out of his mouth. His tongue and jaw separated from his body. It took everything he had not to touch his face, but the blood wouldn't stop spilling from his mouth. Before Shepard could do anything else, Kurogiri immediately wrapped around Shigaraki and teleported them out of there. They'd escaped. All the other villains had been taken care of, but the leaders, the ones responsible for all this, had escaped. Did Shepard do enough? Could he have planned more? Would it have been better just to cancel today's event? Fuck, he hated the feeling of doubt. He hated not being prepared. 10 years ago he failed once. He swore to himself he'd never be unprepared like that again. He always swore to think and plan of every scenario. So why did he fail again? Was he too paranoid? No. No, hell no. Absolutely not. When you're out in the field, one wrong move and you're as good as dead. Preparing yourself to the brink to give yourself and your allies the best odds of survival, that's how Shepard has always thought. Or rather, he had to. Ever since his family had forced. Wait, his family? Shepard's left arm gave out as he dropped his gun. He turned and saw them. He saw his sons. They were okay. They were alive. He was out of breath, but seeing his sons, that calmed his breathing down a bit. Izuku, Katsuki, sorry. He tried to move one leg, but he soon collapsed. Shepard? His two sons shouted as they ran to him, but before he could hit the floor, All Might was there to catch him. Shepard could only just barely lift his head up to see his two boys. Tears were starting to fill up on his eyes. He could only give them an apologetic look before whispering, "Son." He then abruptly coughed up some blood as he passed out. His entire body gave out and his breathing was extremely faint. Shit, Eraser had him, taking him to the hospital. I leave the rest to you. All Might wasted no time in jumping out the building, holding Shepard close. He was going to make it. He had to make it. After the USJ incident, the students were rounded up. Thankfully, none of them were hurt and they'd all made it through. The authorities were called in to take every villain in the scene into custody. When Class 1 got back on school grounds, Eraser informed them that they would all have an excused absence for tomorrow, and on their return they would be granted counseling by Hound Dog. Turns out Shepard had reached out to Hound Dog during the meeting on Monday to act as a counselor for the kids on the off chance that villains did attack. A few students gladly took up the offer, while those that refused, however, assured the staff at UA that they were indeed fine. And by the looks of it, Class 1 managed well. They shouldn't have been thrown into such an ordeal, but they stuck through it all thanks to their teamwork and having been trained by two pros that take their job seriously. Unfortunately, there were two individuals who were not okay in any sense of the word. When Izuku and Bakugo got back to class, they were silent. They sat in their seats, their minds still trying to hold it all together, trying their damn hardest not to break down in the middle of the class. They barely responded to Aizawa, but once that bell rang, they got up and made their way out of UA. Some of the students wanted to talk to them, especially Tsu, Kirishima, and Shinso, but they ignored any attempt at communication. By the time they made it out of UA, the two boys were about to make a run for the train station when Detective Tsukachi pulled up in front of them. All Might already filled me in. Get in, your father needs you both. Not wasting any time, they got into his car and buckled up. Tsukachi put the pedal to the metal, turning on the sirens as he drove as fast he could. During the drive, Tsukachi had told them what room Shepard was in and that the hospital had already been informed of who they were, so they shouldn't have any problems going directly to him. Once Tsukachi made it to the front doors, the boys booked it out of the car and into the hospital. The hospital doors opened and they ran as fast as they could while avoiding bumping into people. Room 302, third floor and second room to the right. Izuku opened the door, and once they entered, Bakugo and Izuku saw him. Their father was laying on a hospital bed, bandages wrapped all over his face, out cold, and IV pumping fluids into his body, a mask to help him breathe and a splint for his right arm. Both sons walked in and closed the door, Izuku on Shepard's left side while Bakugo took the right side. Standing there in silence with the heart and respiratory monitor beeping, the boys soon broke the silence. Dad, wake up. The battle's over, we're fine. We won. Kakin and I, the class, we're all okay thanks to you. Dad, please wake up, please. Izuku knelt down as he was crying, holding his father. Bakugo soon joined him. Hey Dad, me and Deku are okay. You don't have to worry about us, so please wake up. We need you here, please. Dad. Bakugo couldn't keep it in as he bursted into tears, kneeling down on Shepard's right side. Both sons were crying and screaming. pleading, begging for their father to wake up, begging to hear his voice to know that he was okay. They needed him now. The truth of the matter was that we're terrified to lose him. The pain of losing a parent was something Bakugo and Izuku were familiar with. Neither of them ever wanted to feel like that again. Never again. But here they were, in the same hospital that Shepard had saved them 10 years ago. The only difference is neither of them could do anything to save him. All Bakugo and Izuku could do right now is cry and scream at the sight of seeing the man they admired most so broken and vulnerable. Eventually, Shepard's hospital door was opened by Detective Tsukachi, accompanied by Aizawa. The two boys were still crying, kneeling by their father's side, each holding on to Shepard's hands. The two adults approached them, placing a hand on their shoulders. They only tightened their hands on Shepard. "Don't take us away from him," they both demanded. This caused Aizawa and Tsukachi to flinch, but they both reassured Bakugo and Izuku that they were here for them and for Shepard. They weren't here to take them away, but Tsukachi understood the true meaning of what they said. He'd been there that night when the boys lost their parents. He remembered how determined Shepard was in saving the two 5-year-olds. Shepard had thankfully filled in the role of a parent for both of them. From everything Shepard told Tsukachi, he was proud to be their guardian. He was proud to have raised them both and call them his boys. He knew that his sons saw him as a father, and now they were afraid they'd be separated without him. And now for them to see him like this, the mere chance that they may be separated from him, that's what truly causing these two boys to lose it. The idea of a world without Shepard in their life was too painful to even think about. After some time, a doctor would come in to fill them in on how bad Shepard's condition was. 3 broken ribs, a broken right arm, internal bleeding, and a ruptured eyeball. Recovery girl would be scheduled in tomorrow to heal him as best she can. However, the biggest problem was that Shepard had suffered severe brain damage, particularly toward the frontal lobe. The doctor informed them that he may have memory loss when he wakes up, if he wakes up, but it's far too soon to tell at the moment. This didn't sit well with the boys. All the information on how hurt he was and his brain was the most damaged. Would he forget who they are? Would he even remember who he was? How much would he remember? How much can he even remember? They didn't want him to forget who he was. All those years of being a father, they didn't want to lose that. They didn't want to lose him. Both of them just slumped on their chairs and held their heads low. The information was too much. Tears were still streaming down both of their faces. In that moment, they were 5 years terrified at losing their dad. The boys spent all of Wednesday by Shepard's side, only ever leaving for food. Thankfully, Aizawa was there with them. Shepard trusted him with his sons, and he was going to be damned if he'd break that trust. Once Recovery Girl came and she used her quirk to heal Shepard. But for some strange reason, it barely affected him. His injuries remained the same, and for the most part his heart rate only jumped for a brief second. Recovery Girl made mention that a possible surgery may be needed for Shepard on Saturday to properly repair his broken skull. After visiting hours were over, Aizawa drove them home, still refusing to leave their side. The two boys went to their rooms and called it in. They needed it, especially since Thursday wasn't going to be any easier. Come Thursday, Shepard still hadn't woken up, so that wasn't a good start for today. Eraser addressed the class regarding the USJ incident. He apologized that they shouldn't have been put in that position in the first place, but he was proud that they all acted as proper heroes. The class reassured him that he had nothing to apologize for. It was thanks to him that they even had the chance to be properly prepared for that ordeal in the first place. Several of the students assured him that they would be talking to Hound Dog, however, a fact Eraser was already made aware of. Once that announcement was settled, Eraser further informed them of the sports festival was 2 weeks away. It was a big event for them to show off what they'd learned and for them to be scouted by potential pro heroes. The thought of another attack did cross their minds, but with so many pros in one area, it brought a small sense of reassurance to the class. But there was one final statement he was dreading to tell them, but he had to inform them now. As you know, we only had one casualty in the USJ incident. That casualty was Shifter. Unfortunately, he's been out since the attack and I can't say when he'll return, but until then, Principal Nedzu has asked me to fill in his spot as your hand-to-hand instructor. The class stood up. Is he okay? Will he be all right? Can we visit him? Those were the many questions that were asked. Sit down, all of you. I was getting to that. His eyes glowed red as the class sat down. He sighed before deactivating his quirk. Unfortunately, I can't disclose any of his medical information, but at the moment only family members are allowed to visit him. I can assure you, though, he'd want you all to work hard on these coming weeks. You'd be surprised at how good a first impression you all made in the first week. That brought a small smile to the class. Shepard had definitely become a favorite to them in so short a time. He took the time to individually talk to everyone on how to improve, not just as a hero but a person. And to hear that he was the one that was impressed with them meant a lot. Friday arrived and Aizawa had finished taking over Shepard's classroom rather well. While his methods were a bit different, they ended with the same results that Shepard would have wanted. Unfortunately, Aizawa couldn't use the robots that Shepard has as they were designed to listen to his voice only. Class 1 still learned plenty, and with the news of the sports festival coming up, that made them focus on being better. But Izuku and Bakugo were different today, and the class knew it. For one, they'd only really talked to each other. They didn't do any of their competitive fighting, not even during training. Anytime the class approached either of them, they gave them a half-shoulder shrug and walked away. While both aced their training today, they didn't take joy in it. They didn't have that spark of energy that made the class worthwhile. They didn't have Shepard. Once class ended, they were about to walk out of school but were stopped by Tsu, Kirishima, and Shinso. There was a small awkward silence when Bakugo broke it. "The fuck do you want extras?" Kirishima spoke first. "Hey, we were kinda hoping we could walk to the train station with you guys. You two look like you need someone to chat with." As much as they wanted to say no, they really couldn't. Aizawa wouldn't be out until 7, and Detective Tsukachi couldn't drive them since he was working a case that day. "Do whatever you guys want," Bakugo said coldly. He and Izuku walked together as the other three followed behind them. They were almost to the train station when Tsu spoke. "Hey, are you two good? You haven't really been acting like yourselves since Tuesday." "Yeah, me and Kaken have a lot on our minds with the sports festival," Izuku said shyly. "It's not just that. It's about Shepard-sensei, isn't it?" Shinso asked, and their silent reaction definitely confirmed it. "Look, we get you're worried about him. The whole class is. But whatever happened at the USJ, we all made it out. So what's really going on, you two?" They both sighed before Izuku spoke first. "The truth is, we'd already met Shepard before arriving to UA." The three of them were a bit shocked before they could ask. Bakugo interjected, "He saved us both when we were both 5. When we found out he was our teacher, we were surprised, to say the least." Neither of the two boys still felt comfortable with their classmates knowing he was their dad, but they knew maybe if they gave them a half-truth they would understand a bit more. "Did he remember who you both were?" "Ribbit." Izuku confirmed that statement with a nod. "That does explain it. He saved you and you two wanted to save him." Kirishima looked down on the ground. "Shit, man, now we feel bad for pressuring you guys like that. Guess you two really admire him." "Yeah, shit hair, he's one of the 2 reasons me and Deku wanted to be heroes. Maybe we didn't react appropriately, but at the time all we could think about was making that thing pay for hurting the man who saved 2 scared 5-year-olds. Not every day you find your hero is your teacher, only for that hero to get really hurt." Izuku could definitely feel a lump in his throat forming up, so he turned away. "We'll see you 3 Monday. Thanks for checking up on us, but Kaken and I will make it. You saved me and Tsu life, Midoriya back there. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here to check up on you. We never really got the chance to thank you for that. So thank you, Izuku, for saving us." "Ribbit, he's right. There's no way me or him would have thought of a plan to escape. But you did. You even went out of your way to be the distraction for us. We're here thanks to you, Midoriya. If there's anything you ever need, let us know." Some small tears were starting to form in his eyes. He still didn't look at them. It did slip his mind that he did save his classmates, but why wouldn't he? It's what a hero would do. It's what Shepard would have done too. The train leading to the hospital was making its way. "Hey, Bakugo. Thanks for having my back at the USJ. I definitely would have had some problems with this villains if it weren't for you." Bakugo looked back at him before entering the train. "Just keep working on that quirk of yours, and try not to bring yourself down with the 'my quirk isn't flashy' bullshit. If you continue to think like that, then you'll get left behind in the dust." "Yeah, that's fair, Deputy Bakugo." Guess Izuku really was started to infect him with his happy attitude. Oddly enough, he didn't know why he felt the need to encourage Kirishima, even though Bakugo was far from okay. But Shepard always did encourage him, and he's done the same for Izuku. Guess a bit of brutal honesty wouldn't hurt. Both entered the hospital and gave their names to the receptionist. They were told that someone was already in Shepard's room. They made their way to the room and saw All Might was there in his weakened form. They asked if anything had changed, but he was still in the same condition. They sat down hearing the bad news, then room was filled with silence. All Might soon at across from them before looking them in the eyes. "You know, Shepard saved my life once, just as he did for both of you." Both of them lifted their heads up. "Like I told you months ago, there was a tough battle that should have ended with me dying. By all accounts, I shouldn't be walking. But after the battle, Shepard found me and rushed me to the hospital. When I woke up, he was there by my side telling me he was happy he helped. I've known your father for a long time, and he's easily one of the strongest people I have the honor of knowing. When I carried him here, there was one word he would faintly say many times: sons. He'll pull through for both of you, I know it. And he wouldn't want you to be like this. He'd want you both to at least talk to anyone. That's what me and Aizawa are here for especially. Your father trusts Aizawa to watch over you. He trusted me to teach you both." Izuku and Bakugo gave him a thankful look. It did lift their spirits up for a bit, especially knowing more about their father. But when they looked back to see Shepard's body, they just couldn't be so optimistic. Both were dreading the remainder days without Shepard. But they knew, deep down, their old man wouldn't want to see them like this. Eventually, All Might had to leave, but reassured them that Shepard was getting the best care possibly for tomorrow. Both sat there before Aizawa came in to drive them home. He was already debriefed by All Might. He gave Shepard one last sorrowful look before leaving with the boys. "See you tomorrow, Dad," they boys said as they left with a racer. Today was the day for Shepard's surgery. Bakugo and Izuku woke up bright and early. Both wanted to stay at the hospital and spend a few extra moments before Shepard went in for surgery. He still hadn't woken up and there were no signs that he was going to. It was 8 a.m. and the hospital was fairly quiet for the morning. Both boys were standing outside room 302. They gave each other a final look of reassurance before entering Shepard's room. What they heard made their hearts skip several beats. "Good morning, sons." Shepard was sitting halfway up. His face was still covered in bandages, but he was giving Izuku and Bakugo a warm smile. "Dad." Both of them bolted and ran to their father, embracing him in a hug. They held him tighter. They buried their faces deep in his shoulders, tears in both their eyes. He was awake. He was awake. They couldn't believe it. All these days of him being gone with no signs or indication that he was going to wake up, and here he was. Shepard was alive. They held him close, making sure this wasn't some twisted dream or nightmare. But they could feel it. This was their dad, the very man that spent a decade of his life raising them. They were happy he was back, but they remembered why he was scheduled for surgery today. How much does he remember? And how much has he really forgotten? They held him a bit longer before pulling back. "Dad, there's so much. We thought you weren't." Izuku was still crying too much. Bakugo tried to speak up, but he was still crying bad. Shepard, however, ruffled their hairs. Hey, it's all right. I'm here. I'm awake and alive. You too can hear my voice. You can hear my breathing and my heart. You felt my shoulders and my hands on your heads. I'm here, boys, and everything is gonna be all right. But first take a breather and tell me everything. I'm not going anywhere, okay?" And they did. Once they composed themselves, they told him all that had happened. How hurt he was on Tuesday, the students being okay, a racer watching over them at home and him taking over his class, the information of the sports festival, and how he was scheduled for surgery today due to his cranial injury. They also told them how they weren't themselves these past few days, how terrified they were of being separated from him. They left no detail out there. They wanted to tell their father everything. "Well, I'm glad Aizawa has been watching over you too. And I'm relieved no one was hurt while the villains attacked. And cranial damage to my frontal lobe." He chuckled. "I could never forget you two, ever. The two of you have given me the best decade of my life. Those memories will never fade." He gave them another bandaged smile, but his sons felt so reassured that he didn't forget anything about them. "But I need you both to be honest with me. Have you two talked to anyone about what happened on Tuesday?" There was silence in the room that didn't sit well with Shepard as he sighed. "Look, I get you two were afraid of losing me, but it's not just that," they both adamantly said, standing up. "We wouldn't have anyone if you died. How could we be sure if me and Deku could stay together? We didn't want to relive that pain again. That pain of losing a parent. You were the only thing that kept us together all those years. If me and Deku lost you, fuck, we'd be broken, okay? We'd be so broken we wouldn't even be able to continue as heroes. We have our teachers, but they're not you. They're not the man who raised and saved us. You are." They didn't mean to snap at Shepard or raise their voices at him, but he needed to know how insecure they'd been. They each sat down as Shepard looked down at the bed he was sitting on. They were both right, and he knew it. If he was gone from this world, there was no way his sons would be able to truly recover. "Thank you for being honest with me, boys. So let me make you both a promise. I'll be more careful from now on with everything I do. From work to teaching at UA. I don't ever want to put you through that pain ever again." Looking them directly in the eyes, "I swear it in the names and memories of Masaru Bakugo, Mitsuki Bakugo, Hisashi Midoriya, and Inko Midoriya. I'll be more careful." That was a promise his sons knew he'd keep for them. They gave Shepard a smile and a fist bump. They'd expected his dad to be mad at them for holding it all in, for not talking or communicating with anyone. But he couldn't be mad at them. He could never be mad at them, not ever. Thanks, Dad. But if this happens again, we'll talk to someone. Eraser or All Might, it doesn't matter, we'll talk to someone. For you, old man. If this ever happens again, yeah, me and the nerd will talk it out. We'll talk it out for you, okay? Just please don't leave us." "Thanks, boys. I meant what I said." A few moments later, the door opened and a nurse came by. She was surprised to see Shepard awake and called Recovery Girl immediately. She arrived with Aizawa, All Might, and Detective Tsukachi. Tsukachi wasted no time in giving him a hug, asking him if he was really all right and if he remembered who they were. Shepard had no problem confirming he was his first friend in Japan. Aizawa looked at him with guilt, saying that it was his fault he was so hurt in the first place. But Anton reassured him that there was nothing to be sorry for. He was just glad everyone was all right and safe. All Might was just grateful he was awake. The last time he saw Shifter, he was dying in his arms. Recovery Girl gave him a checkup to see if he was truly okay. To her surprise, he was indeed completely fine. His right arm and broken ribs were healed up. When she removed the bandages, his face was just as healed and his ruptured eyeball was able to see perfectly. His breathing and heart rate were normal. The X-rays even revealed that his cracked skull was in excellent condition. Once Shepard's checkup was done, everyone came in the room to see the results. They were all perplexed as to how on earth Anton pulled a miracle like this. Just yesterday he wasn't in any kind of condition to move, much less talk, but now. Recovery girl tapped her cane when she finally addressed the room. Well, I honestly don't know what to say. It's as if the damage never happened. What troubles me is that somehow my quirk didn't work on you. And yet here you are fully healed. Maybe your quirk had a delayed effect. Aizawa spoke. That's never truly happened before. Even when one of my patients is low on energy, the healing is immediate. Unless of course you have an idea on how this happened, Anton. Shifter was silent throughout the entire conversation. Truth be told, he did know exactly why her quirk didn't work. He also knew why he was fully healed and why he was no longer on death's door. He contemplated answering, but Tsukachi beat him to the punch. I know that look, Anton. You already knew this would happen, didn't you? Fuck, he really didn't want to say, but deep down he knew it was time to explain to them a bit of the truth. They were his friends after all, he's always trusted them, so why not now? Shepard nodded and relented. You're all people I trust. Several of you have saved my life multiple times. He sighed one last time before getting up. Aizawa tried to approach him, but he held his hand out, signaling him to stop. The information I tell and show you all does not leave this room. You take it to your grave. If I find out you told anyone, I will make you life very difficult. Am I clear? Everyone looked back at each other before promising to keep their lips shut. Once Shifter had that confirmation, he turned his back on everyone. Taking in one final second to himself, he removed his shirt. Everyone went wide-eyed. Anton's back was filled with scars, from claw marks to chemical burns, many injection marks, bullet wounds, and his spine was the worst of it. It looked like someone had performed countless surgeries in that area, as there were the signs of many surgery stitches. Once everyone got a good look, he turned around so they could see a scar on his chest where his heart is. Worse, there was a much larger scar on his stomach, as if he'd been stabbed or impaled by a large object. He put his shirt back on, but silence filled the room. His sons were mortified. They'd never seen these wounds before. Aizawa and Tsukachi remained speechless. In all the years they'd known Shepard, he'd never even made mention of these wounds. All Might didn't know what to say. His own body wasn't in good shape, but seeing Shepard's, it was a perspective he wished he never saw. Recovery Girl was the only one who could muster a word out. How long have you had those wounds? Shepard could only chuckle. Oh, you know, it started at 5, ended when I turned 18. He was trying to make light of the situation, but it wasn't helping. 13 years, Anton. 13 years, what the hell happened to you? Why didn't you ever tell us? Tsukachi shouted. Maybe because my time in the US was shit. Maybe because I'm ashamed of the things I did back there. Looking him directly in the eyes, and it doesn't help that these wounds were all inflicted by family. Tsukachi said something that sent everyone into a spiral. Truth. He never really used his quirk on Shepard. Why would he? After all, for over a decade they had each other's back through many ordeals, and he was there when he announced his retirement. But he had to verify that everything that was coming out of Shepard's mouth was the truth. He wishes he hadn't done so, however. What? Everyone shouted and lost their cool. They misheard that, right? His family did that to him. Yeah, my family is pretty fucked up like that. He laughed, but it was a painful laugh. Aizawa grabbed him by the shirt. How the hell can you laugh at something like that? How the hell can you be so fucking calm? And all of those wounds were done by your family. And you think you can laugh it off? Shifter, all the times you've helped us out and we'd never ask you to do those things. You've risked your life countless times for making sure the heroes have an edge. How many times have you saved my life? The amount of times you've taken a blow for me, present Mike or Tsukachi. Did you really think we wouldn't have done the same for you? The racer had unintentionally activated his quirk, angry at Shepard not confiding in them. But he loosened his grip when he Anton's eyes, how they were almost devoid of any life. The racer shut off his quirk when he saw how frail Shepard was starting to become, so he backed off. I suppose we understand why you wouldn't want anyone to know, but why would your family do that to you? What excuse could they have for causing all that pain to a child nonetheless? Recovery Girl asked with a bit of a demanding tone. It's because I'm a Shepard. He began to explain further. When you're born into that family, things are expected, or rather demanded, of you. And if you don't meet those requirements, they change you so that you will meet their requirements. He balled up his fist so hard that it turned white, not just physically but mentally. Age and gender are irrelevant. If you're a Shepard, you fulfill your role. His tone was filled with contempt and spite. Aizawa, Tsukachi, and his sons had only been partly aware that he wasn't in good terms with his family, but this wasn't what they expected. What do you mean change you? What exactly did they do to you? All Might hesitantly asked. Right, well, I've been genetically altered a total of 78 times. For starters, my body stopped aging when I turned 21. I'm still technically 35 years old, but I'll always have the body of a 21-year-old. I'm not immortal, but my appearance will never change. Then there's the metabolism. My body will never lose any of its muscle mass, nor will it gain any body fat. There's also the fact that my brain was altered for me to become a night owl. Basically, I can only ever get 1 hour of sleep, but that hour is all my body needs to fully rest. That and my nerves have been rearranged so I can ignore certain body pains. The muscle fibers in my body were also changed to be more dense and firm. I'm also resistant and immune to certain drugs and toxins. Because of that, I can never get drunk, and it takes more anesthetics to actually bring me down. My spine was also injected with small nanobots to ensure I can never be paralyzed. If at any point in time that part of my body breaks, those bots will repair my spine. All of this was done because I'm a shepherd. Everyone was speechless 78 times. What the hell? How was he even alive or standing? No, rather, how could he even be alive? All those altercations to his body and he was alive. Izuku spoke up. What about the chest and stomach scar? Oh, those are from the 2 times I've come close to truly dying. He paused as the look in his eyes were definitely sorrowful. To this day, no wound has ever hurt as much as these. His tone was also sorrowful, but why was there a bit of anger behind it? Izuku chose not to pry further. Bakugo looked at him. Is that why when you adopted us you didn't want us taking your name? Shepard shook his head in agreement. That was the secondary reason. The main reason was out of respect for both of your birth parents. Sakachi asked his next question. His quirk still activated. When we first met, you told me the reason you moved to Japan was because you wanted a fresh start. You meant from your family, didn't you? He nodded at that response. And you mentioned your family did all that. Was it just your parents or siblings? At first it was all my parents, but as I grew older my siblings would join in on making my life far more difficult. Being the youngest can suck sometimes. Youngest out of how many? The detective asked, raising an eyebrow. I'm the youngest of 3. My birth was always a bit of a problem. My parents had an heir, the spare, and I was left in the cold for most of my life. They thought I might actually pose a threat to inherit the whole estate. He laughed and shook his head. Placing a hand over his face, he laughed again. Ironic that my 2 siblings took to their positions quite well. They were practically idolized while I was ignored for the first 5 years. But that all changed when my quirk appeared. They found it odd, to say the least. It wasn't flashy or powerful, it was simple. And simple in that family doesn't cut it. There was pure hatred when he explained his siblings. No bullshit, no tricks, just pure rage. So they never allowed me to attend any schools. Instead, they gave me private tutors. But the experiments would soon start after each tutoring session. He removed his hand from his face, a small tear streaming down. By the age of 7, I'd already lost 20% of my natural body tissue. You were a child, All Might protested, and they got away with it. No, they could do whatever the fuck they wanted to. Shepard interrupted angrily, slamming his fist on the wall. When you pay 1 divided by 3rd of the US economy and half the funding of the hero system, surprise, surprise, you can do as you damn well please. He shouted as there was a focused rage in his voice, but it immediately went away. Sorry, that was a bad me. I didn't mean to snap. Look, they did what they did and there wasn't a damn thing I could to stop them. You are right, I was just kid. A kid who hoped so badly that by agreeing to do all those experiments that maybe he might earn a bit of his parents' approval. But by the time I realized it was all a lie, it was too late. They only ever saw me as a weapon to be sharpened and molded. Is that why you became a hero, Dad? Izuku asked. Shepard couldn't even look at his son when he asked him that question. Sorry, kid, but no. Even being a hero was a tainted choice. When my parents discovered I had hyperthymesia, they knew exactly what role to give me. They made me an information broker. By the time I was 10, I knew things no kid should ever have to know. All for the family, to gather information for blackmail on any political rival or to increase their status. They soon realized that a hero would be the perfect cover for gathering information. 16 years old I passed and became a pro. Wait, back the fuck up. You become a pro at 16. How is that even allowed? Bakugo asked very angrily. In the US you're given a choice at the age of 16. You can become a sidekick or go pro. Most people tend to become sidekicks due to the fact that if you become a pro you won't receive as much funding or help from the government. At the age of 18 you then take another test to see if you're good enough to be a pro. Once you pass that test you're given your ranking. You'd think that after all I did for them they would have been proud that I passed the exam. But they saw it as an offense. An offense? Elaborate, Shepard. All Might demanded. The more he heard the more he wanted to go to the US and punch every single one of his family. Bad enough they did those experiments to him, but robbing him of the joy to be a hero. All Might was not in the mood. Shepard explained how his siblings' quirks were much flashier than his own. He went into detail on how while they received better training they always lacked the drive to actually perform well. They all took the test, and while his older siblings made it to ranks 27 and 21, Shepard himself made it to the top 10, ranking at 7. Bakugo and Izuku jaws just dropped. They misheard that. Their old man had reached the top 10 at the age of 18. Making it to number 1 had still been their dream. The goal of surpassing All Might hasn't changed one bit. But now they've found out that Anton made it to number 7 by his own skills, no bribery, no threats, all on his own. Once Shepard's parents found out that the stain of the family had surpassed their 2 golden children, well, they were disappointed and livid. They called him a selfish child who took away his 2 older siblings' moment to happiness. Why would he do that to them? After everything they'd done for him. all the sacrifices they made, giving him the privilege and honor to be called a shepherd. Why would Anton do something so cruel to their son and daughter? That day Anton snapped at them for the first time in his life. He explained that it was his accomplishment, not theirs. How it was never even his choice to be a hero. That was all just a front for him to gather information so they could use it for their own benefit. He had enough, he thought, or rather hoped that if he surpassed his older siblings, that maybe, just maybe, he could finally receive some recognition. But that never came to be, and Anton decided to no longer care. He made a choice that day, the second best choice of his life. He left. He took all of his inheritance as he was still a shepherd despite all the years of abuse. The family tried to stop him that day, but they couldn't touch him. For over a decade, Anton had acquired so much information on everyone that he knew everything that was worth knowing in the US, including information on his own family. He gave them all a threat: if any of you ever try and follow me, I will leak classified information of the family to all your political rivals. Know that I will always be watching everything you do. To this day, that threat still stands, and his family damn well knows it. He may rarely, if ever, visit the US, but each time he does, he makes it his own personal mission to remind them, I'm still alive and watching. I will always be watching. Not caring at all for the ceremony of being in the top 10, Shepherd made a deal with the government. He would work for them for the next 3 years, traveling all around the world gathering intel for them. He had 2 conditions, however. First, he was his own boss out in the field, he answered to no one. And 2, he gets to keep his hero license. What made his license different is the fact that being in the top 10, he had the jurisdiction to perform hero work on a worldwide scale. That alone was all he needed to do countless missions, succeeding in each one and always delivering with results. Each mission was brutal, but he did them anyways, no matter the consequence. But traveling around the world did help bring him a certain clarity on things. He wasn't anyone's weapon, he was his own man. Humility, spirituality, understanding it helped him realize as he was living in fear of not being a shepherd but becoming like them. But he wasn't. He'd learned that traveling the world and being a hero that should have at least been his choice. So he was going to make it his. Once he turned 21, he'd fulfilled his deal with the US, informing them to only call him if things were terrible. However, he had one final request to make: to change his hero name. On that day, he was still Anton Shepherd, but he'd become Pro-Hero Shifter. So that's my story of my fucked up family. Remember, take it all to your graves. They all needed to sit down from what they'd just heard. From all the experiments to the many pressures and unfair treatment Anton endured. And him being in the top 10 so young. He didn't have an easy life. It's no wonder he never told them. Only ever making mention of how distant he was with them. Distant was an fucking understatement. Recovery Girl stood up and approached Shifter. You've been through so much, it's a miracle you haven't gone rogue or lost your mentality. I've always seen you with a smile, with such a positive attitude. Despite what you see as an underground hero, you've pushed through it all. You really are a kind soul, Shifter. That earned her a genuine soft laugh from Anton. But I hate to ask this still. It doesn't explain how you were healed so quickly. Was it the modifications? Shepherd put his back on the wall and slid down to the floor, slouching. I'm sorry, Recovery Girl, but that is one secret I can never tell anyone. He held his head down, not looking her in the eyes. Shifter, Shio, please leave it that. I'd rather not talk more about my past. Shepherd had kept it together, but he couldn't tell them his biggest shame. It was something he was going to take with his grave. She relented. If Barley, all right, but you won't be discharged until tomorrow. You're to limit yourself only to desk work, no active hero work until after the sports festival. And as for your class, I have no problem with you teaching, but you will be supervised by a teacher for at least 1 week. Am I clear, young man? She said all this while gently beating his skull with her cane. Crystal clear, ma'am. He hid a faint smile. Chio Shuzenji always has that effect on people. She was adamant about her patients getting rest and would hound any who tried to escape their recovery period. Shepherd did assure her he made his 2 boys a promise earlier to not overdo himself. He was more than happy to follow her instructions. And as for who would supervise him, he informed her she can tell Principal Nedzu can pick whomever he'd like. Aizawa and All Might both happily volunteered. It was the least they could do. The adults began to leave, but the boys wanted a moment alone with their father. Shepherd was still slouching on the floor, so his 2 boys knelt down. The rank 7, can you believe it, Deku? All this time we were being raised by a top 10 hero. Hard to believe. It makes a bit of sense why he was so well prepared for every scenario. And the old fart did it at the age of 18. Guess we have a lot of work cut out for us. You can say that again, but this still makes the old man boring. Oh yeah, totally. He's still a boring old fart. I'm right here, you too. We know. They both said. Old man, after what you told us, after everything you went through, you're still the best damn parent in the world. Yeah, it's so hard to believe you're even related to those assholes. You've raised 2 kids and treated them equally. That's more than they ever did for you. I guess what we're. Dad. Shepherd couldn't take it anymore. He started to breathe heavy and lifted his head up, tears flowing down his face. I never meant for you 2 to find out like this. I never wanted you both to have to see those wounds on my back. All I ever wanted was for both of you to grow up and be heroes, to live a normal life, but here I am fucking it up. Some shit job I've been doing trying to be a father, my ass. I made you two worry over this sad excuse of a parent. Shut up, Dad. Shepard stopped crying to see his sons were crying. Excuse of a parent? Hell no. You're more than we ever could have asked for. 10-fucking-year-old fart. 10 years and you never once gave up on either us. You humbled me by teaching me not to let this quirk of mine go to my head. I'm who I am because of you. Do you even hear yourself? Why would you ever think or say you're an excuse of a parent? Do you have any idea how grateful we are to you? How lucky we are that you chose us to be a part of your life? You telling us about your past. The only thing we see is a man who's endured so much pain, so much trauma, and hasn't let it consume him. Dad, you're so damn strong to have kept it together, but just for tonight let me and Izuku keep you together. Let us be the thing that prevents you from falling into darkness. Please let us be there for you. But Shepard couldn't muster any words as more tears flowed down. He was tired, so tired and still scarred by his family. Enough was enough. He gently pulled his sons in close for a hug. They held each other when the boys could feel Shepard's breath faster. They felt tears dropping on their shoulders. But they heard his muffled screams and whimpers letting it all for tonight. They refused to let him go, giving each other a side look. Will protect you when you can't protect yourself. Those words made Shifter hold them tighter and closer. He hated to put such a burden on them for tonight. He would make it up to them somehow. But for today he let himself fall, knowing that his sons would keep him safe. They were gonna be okay. Things would be better. They were a family. Once Shepard was cleared for Sunday, he spent the entire day at his son's side. Shepard was completely fine with this. He was very adamant to keep that promise he made after all. Once he got home, the boys instantly went guardian mode on him. At least one of them stood by his side. Shepard was to spend Sunday relaxing, and that's what he was going to do. For the most part, they'd do simple things like watching movies, cooking, Shepard watching his sons train, to the boys foolishly challenging their old man to a Nerf gun battle. It was such a serene moment for all of them. They were back to being a family again. Aizawa and Tsukachi would arrive in the afternoon to make sure Shepard was doing well. They entered to see Izuku and Bakugo trying to beat their old man in an arm wrestling match, which they lost. They stayed for dinner, asking if Shepard was indeed ready for tomorrow. It was a fair thing to ask, but Anton reassured him that tomorrow's plan wasn't anything difficult, only that it'll be a fun day for Class 1A. Shepard was on his laptop laying in bed. He wanted to review the USJ incident a bit to see if there was anything he could pick up from once he got back to work. Looking at the footage, he saw how each of the students handled the villains. He was indeed impressed with Class 1A. They had solid teamwork and were using their quirks effectively. He then turned his attention to him being beaten alive by the Namu and then tossing him aside. Guess he really was that hurt, huh? He had to pause the video when he saw where his body was thrown at. He landed in front of Shinso, Tsu, Kirishima, and his sons. Fuck. He really wished his sons were lying when they told him that part. His next reaction was seeing both of them charge at the Namu, fighting that thing head on. Those idiots. They could have gotten hurt or worse. Fucking hell, Shepard was starting to panic. Why would they do that? Why would they risk their own future and lives like that? How could they be so? But he stopped when a picture came on his nightstand, caught his eye. His first family picture with the boys. The first time they'd ever ask him for a picture with them. Shepard cursed his perfect memory sometimes, never being able to forget the many terrible things he did for his family. Nor could he ever forget the pain that was inflicted on him or the pain that he caused so many others. But this moment was always a light in the dark for him. His first official step to being a parent. I didn't save you two knuckleheads. You two saved me, he whispered, smiling fondly, putting the picture back and closing his laptop. He'd worry about the USJ footage another day. For now, resting was the plan. Midnight. Shepard woke up. 1 hour a day really meant only 1 hour, no more, no less. When he opened his eyes, he was a bit surprised to see Midoriya and Bakugo sleeping next to him. The two of them probably snuck in his room when he fell asleep. It has been a long while since his boys pulled this move on him, but he was just happy to be home. Not wanting to wake them up, he shifted out of bed. He could hear their very faint and light breathing. A small grumble could be heard from Bakugo, and Shepard could swear Izuku was drooling a bit on the pillow. Guess something's never changed, huh? It then dawned on him that was the first time he'd used his quirk since the accident, and it felt different, and regrettably he was all too aware why it was different. It was faster, and more so he could feel the cooldown effect had become non-existent. He looked down at his hands as they shook for a bit. He truly despised what was done to him all those years ago, but he wasn't going to let him affect him now, especially when he needed to watch out for his sons to become heroes. Entering the restroom, he washed his face. Upon gazing up at the mirror, his reflection brought back many unpleasant memories. But you were sent here to save us. Why did you let this happen? When did I say I was here to save you? I was sent here to do a job and I completed. But what about those people? It was an obstacle and it got in my way, so I removed it. How can you be so callous? Those are human beings, you. Bang. Yes, everything's fine. No one knows I was here. Understood. I'll arrive to the next country soon enough and report my findings to all of you. The sclera of both his eyes were crimson blood red. He immediately closed them and began to count. The square root of 906.01 equals 30.1. Square root of 912.04 equals 30.2. Square root of 918.09 equals 30.3. Square root of 924.16 equals 30.4. Deep breaths. The square root of 906.01 equals 30.1. He repeated this process many times, keeping his breath steady and focused. His eyes eventually returned to normal upon opening them. Putting a hand on the bathroom mirror, seeing his reflection. Your greatest shame, Anton. Never forget what you did. Never forget why you truly became a hero. Never. Morning. Katsuki opened his eye and checked the clock. It was around 6 a.m. Right, it was going to be the first Monday with Shepard back at school. Part of him wished he and Izuku could spend a bit more time with their old man. No classes, no hero work, just the three of them together. He was still focused on being the best and to see what he can't do. He's always been a natural prodigy, but the realization at how good his old man was definitely left him with a lot of questions. How hard does he have to work to measure up to his father? Can he even do it? Shifter had more training and experience than he ever really thought. He started to doubt if he even was good enough. 10 months ago he had to be saved by Izuku, and now he couldn't even save his old man from being hurt. Fuck. He despised this feeling of weakness. He wasn't weak, he was strong. His quirk was strong, and it helped ensure he was strong too. So why wasn't it enough to save the people he cared about? 9 years he was taught by a single rank-digit hero, and he didn't feel any different than where he was a year ago. He closed his eyes to take a second to stop worrying. There was room for improvement, and he was going to be better, not just for his family, but because it was always his goal to be number one. When he turned around and saw Shepard wasn't next to him, though, he immediately woke up. He did see Izuku was asleep, drooling on the pillow. Oi, Deku, the old fart is gone. Izuku slowly opened his eyes. Between the two of them, Izuku was always a much heavier sleeper. Izuku could sleep through the apocalypse, wake up only to go back to sleep again as if nothing happened. Damn it, nerd, get your ass up. What? But the absence of his father was all Izuku needed to go from a 0 to 100. Both of them bolted out of bed and started to look for their old man in a panic. Bakugo searching the restroom and Shepard's office. Izuku searching the many rooms on the second floor. The training room and shooting room were empty as Izuku searched both, calling for the old man. Bakugo then searched the many guest rooms, but nothing. They were about to panic when they stopped near the elevator. They smelled something good. No way, pancakes. Ignoring the elevator, both ran to the stairs and bolted it to the kitchen. Dad. Izuku and Bakugo stopped out of breath to see their old man making them breakfast, particularly chocolate chips pancakes with whipped cream. Shepard turned around and laughed lightly. So did you two run all over the house thinking I was gone, or did you bolt it to the kitchen when you recognized the smell of my pancakes? Both each said, laughing. Shepard shook his head as the boys sat at the table. He continued to prepare them breakfast. His chocolate chip pancakes were to die for, and the boys knew it. As kids, the instant they smelled his pancakes, both of them would always run at blinding speed and sit at the table with most anticipated look to their lives. To this day, despite both of them being good at cooking, neither of them could ever figure out how Shepard made these heaven-gifted pancakes. Munching down on his breakfast, Izuku was just back to a giddy 5-year-old kid kicking his feet back and forth. God, he missed this so much, just being able to be himself with his family. To not have to worry or have any doubt that things were gonna be bad. Past few days were rough, but now he could focus on the sports festival and how to improve his quirk. As much as he hated to admit it, the battle with the Namu did help him reach 15% without his hero costume. It was a small number increase, but he could feel it was a significant improvement. It did make him think, how was All Might's progression compared to his? Was he really improving at a good enough rate, and if so, would he be good enough to win the sports festival? Oh, that's right, if he wants to win, the potential idea of fighting his older brother did dawn on him. The chance to fight Bakugo one-on-one with their old man watching from the stadium. Shit, that was something he definitely hoped would happen. He smiled at the idea but knew that there were other strong opponents, but those questions would be asked for another time. As he continued to munch down, he noticed he'd finished his plate. Izuku gave Shepard the biggest puppy eyes in all to existence, asking Shepard for another batch, which Shepard happily gave him an additional 4. Izuku wasted no time in devouring his breakfast. Bakugo slowly slid his empty plate to Shepard's side, looking down as if he'd been punished by the gods. Giving him a small chuckle, he placed 4 more pancakes on Bakugo, and Bakugo did not hesitate to eat his extra breakfast. By the time both of them had finished, their shirts and faces were filled with some pancake crumbs. Shepard couldn't help but give out a laugh. How is it that these two could revert to 5-year-olds whenever he made this breakfast? Before Izuku got up to clean up, he finally mustered the courage to ask Shepard what he wanted to know. Hey, old man, I know this may be a bit personal, but were you at least happy to have received that ranking? Shepard turned his head around when Izuku asked him that question. Both of them had been very respectful to not ask him about his past yesterday, but even he knew at least one of them would be curious about his life in the US. Was he happy? It was so long ago, but he really could remember every last detail of that day. Passing that physical and written exam, beating his brother and sister, it felt so good to have an accomplishment he could call his own, even if it was just for a brief second. Yeah, kid, for a moment it was just me. No peer pressure from anyone, but receiving that number. He couldn't help but chuckle. Receiving that number definitely meant something to me. He gave Izuku a reassuring smile to not worry about invading too much of his privacy. Seeing Izuku ask Shepard about his past, he knew it was definitely his turn. Bakugo took in a breath before asking his own personal question, what about your scars? Do they hurt? Izuku looked at Katsuki. He didn't know if Bakugo went too far with asking him that. Taking in a moment, he looked Katsuki in the eyes. Not anymore, Bakugo. They did for a time. Even after I left them, it was still a sensitive part of my body. But they say time heals all wounds. The pain is gone, but the wounds are still there, kid. He approached both his sons and put a hand on their shoulder. These scars will always be a part of me, no matter how much I want them to go away. But you two don't need to worry about them, and you don't have to feel bad about asking me about my life. So we good, you too. Both of them put a hand on Shepard's hand and gave him a nod. They went to go change and prepare themselves for today. I am here. Arriving in, All Might showed up at Shepard's front doorstep. Unfortunately, his arrival was cut short as he coughed up some blood, deflating into his weakened form. He coughed up more blood as Shepard gave him a handkerchief. Let me guess, you're here to make sure I drive safely. I'm assuming Eraser put you up to this. Guilty as charged. Shepard shook his head. Come on, you three were taking the Camaro for a change. All Might sat in the passenger side while the two boys sat in the back. The drive was relatively quiet. So, young Midoriya, how goes your training with OFA? Upon hearing that, Izuku light up. No, he actually lit up as he accidentally activated OFA. It's been awesome. I can use 15% now. Oh, actually, I was hoping to ask you, how far did you manage to progress with OFA? Did you struggle as much as I did? If you didn't, what are some pointers I should know about? Did OFA affect your body like it did mine? Oh, and I've been thinking of incorporating some other moves too. Mixing my punches and kicks and more technical abilities, so could you? DIKU. Bakugo shouted to Early for your mumbling and turn off the light show, damn it. Kakin. Oh god, I'm so sorry, All Might, I didn't mean to mumble. Shepard gave a small snort. Well, Izuku, All Might did ask, so he set himself up for that one. All Might coughed a bit. Yes, well, I'm always glad to see how enthusiastic you are at your training, young Midori. But actually, you're making better progress with OFA than I did in my time. OFA came naturally to me, but you're using it in a far safer and effective way than I did. That definitely brought a smile to Izuku. Glad he was making decent progress, and the best part is he hasn't broken any of his body since the UA entrance exam. You hear that, Kakin? Guess I'm a natural-born prodigy. Seems you're not working hard enough to keep up with me. That's not exactly what I meant, but All Might was interrupted. Bakugo scoffed, huh? As if, in case you've forgotten, I still have several advantages over you, damn nerd. Oh yeah, name one. Izuku glared at him. Boys, perhaps now. Shepard was the one cut off. For one, I've got range. I can fly. I hit harder than you. I've got more muscle mass than you do, and my quirk doesn't cause me to blow my arms off. Katsuki was glaring at him back. Izuku raised his voice. I said one, not several. Looks like you need to work on your listening skills. And I haven't broken any of my bones since the entrance exam because I work hard. Guess that means you're getting lazy in your training. Smoke could be seen coming out of Bakugo's nostrils. The fuck did you say? I stutter. Young Bakugo, young Midoriya. Now sons, let's. Unfortunately, Izuku and Bakugo were neck and neck and were scrapping with each other, completely ignoring the two adults in the front. See, this is why you're still second, little brother. No longer second because I've gotten. Zip it, older brother is talking here. Oh hell no, you are not pulling that card, Kakin. I hate it when you do that. Tough break, guess you should have been born faster. You little. IZUKUMIDORIYA. KATSUKIBAKUGO. Both of them froze as Shepard now had a very serious tone of voice. The two of you are not children. You're hero students, so start acting like it, or so help me I will ground you both for a month. The car went dead silent as this was the first time All Might had heard of Shepard's angry dad voice, but hearing it definitely reminded him of his old mentor. Katsuki and Izuku looked down with shocked expression. Maybe they did go a bit overboard. As both calmed down from their shock, the two of them exchanged a look for a split second. Sorry, Dad, they said in unison. Shepard looked at them through the mirror. It's fine, just try to keep it civil for today, okay? It's still too early, all right. The bell rang, but Aizawa stopped them. They were informed that they would be going out of school for a special assignment. The majority of the class complained as they were going to miss lunch, but their teacher had informed them that lunch would be provided for them. Making their way to the bus, the class stomachs could definitely be heard grumbling as they were driven to another part of town. There was constant chatter as to why this assignment was so special that it required them to drive all the way to town. But Izuku and Bakugo had told them to trust Eraser. There wasn't any reason to doubt him. The class was surprised to see that the bus had stopped at a restaurant. Once they got out and made their way inside, they were taken to a private back room. The restaurant itself was extremely fancy, but they were surprised to recognize a few heroes were eating inside. Once they made their way to their private room, they saw Hound Dog and Present Mike were already inside. The servers all handed them their menus and informed them to take as long as they want with their orders. "So you guys saw some heroes here, right? I wasn't imagining it," Mina asked. "Yeah, is this like a secret club or something?" Kirishima exclaimed. More or less, the commissioner was convinced that heroes are still people. Aizawa explained a few years ago a certain hero convinced the committee to build this restaurant as a way for heroes to just relax and be themselves. It's definitely helped improve morale around hero work, I'll admit. He sat down, but he didn't need to read the menu. Aizawa already knew what he was gonna get. Even so, heroes have a limited booking here since we don't want to overflow the staff here. So enjoy this, and I don't have to explain that your shenanigans are to be kept down. Am I clear? Yes, sir. Not long after Class 1 began to order. While they waited, they talked amongst themselves regarding the upcoming sports festival and how their weekend went. Soon enough, their food arrived and they started to eat. To say the food was delicious was an understatement. Most of the class dropped their silverware upon first taste. They began to savor each bite, and they all stopped mid-meal to thank their teachers for doing this. But the teachers assured them that they didn't pay for this trip, that someone else had not only paid for reservations but all their meals for today. Before they could even ask who, the private room door opened. "Glad to see everyone is doing well and in such good spirits. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important now, am I?" Shepard entered the room, and there was a brief second of silence. Shepard SENSEI. Class 1 erupted as they stopped eating and ran to meet him. They hadn't heard anything from his condition but were completely relieved and overjoyed to see him. Shepard told them he was just cleared for the weekend and that he was all good to teach, but per recovery girl's orders he'll have someone supervise him for the week. And the time being, today was meant to be a day of relaxation for them, especially since starting tomorrow he's going to put them through a bit of hell. The class laughed at that comment. "Did that sound like a logical deception to all of you?" Shepard said with a raised eyebrow. The class deflated, which made Shepard. He told them to relax and just to enjoy today. He's just happy everyone has been doing well and good. They all sat back and began to eat, but how happy they were to know that Shepard was back and at 100%. "Hey Shinso, you think you're gonna use your capture weapon for the sports festival?" Shinso stopped when he heard Izuku talk to him. Guess he really needed that weekend as he was back to his old happy self. "I haven't decided. I mean, I'd have to do some paperwork, but I'm more than likely not going to. I mean, it would help, but I'm still not confirming and using it completely. Besides, gonna be hard for me since my quirk. If you say your quirk is negative in any, I will toss you across this table." Bakugo gave a smirk while Shepard just took a long sip from his drink. "Look Shinso, I know your quirk is awesome and I think it's time you saw that. Plus you're more than just your quirk, remember. How many times have you gotten some good hits in whenever we train?" "I must agree with Izuku. I'm sorry for getting into your conversation," Ida said, chopping his hands at them. "Each time Shepard-sensei make us fight without quirks, you're usually the first to adapt to it, Shinso. I never really noticed." He chucked a bit. Guess he was slowly getting better even if he hadn't realized it. And Izuku asking him about his capture weapon, did he secretly want another rematch? He gave one devilish smile. "Well, I appreciate the compliment, Ida, and what about you, Midoriya? Are you gonna use Shepard-sensei's gloves in the festival?" Izuku went a bit silent. Oh snap, that was right. By now everyone had realized he and Shifter had the same gloves. But neither of the two brothers wanted to reveal that they were his kids, not yet anyway. "Oh, no, I don't think so. I mean, they're really useful and all, but I won't be needing them. Actually, I have been meaning to ask." Ida looked directly at Izuku. "How did you acquire Shifter's gloves? I don't recall ever hearing about any agency or company making them." But Shepard came to his son's rescue. He remembered what they look. Shepard said over the table. Imagine my surprise at realizing a 5-year-old remembered what my gloves look like. The kid's got a good memory. Izuku just gave the old man a small smile. He was still looking out for him. Izuku spent a majority of his time talking to the Izu squad. He didn't stop smiling or laughing once, and Shifter could have sworn he was kicking his feet back and forth like this morning. Meanwhile, the Baku squad had begun to annoy Bakugo with their non-functional brain cells. "Looks like Midoriya is back to his happy self. You back to your grumpy self, Bakubro?" Kirishima asked. "Yeah, shit, hair me and the damn nerd needed a minute. Besides, Shepard is also back, so that also helps." "That's good to hear, man. Makes sense. Having your hero be your teacher must be awesome." Mina perked up at that last statement. "Wait, what do you mean by hero?" She tilted her head, curiosity getting the better of her. Katsuki took a second before he said, "Screw it, Shepard saved me and Deku when we were 5. He's one of the 2 reasons we wanted to be heroes. And the main reason me and Izuku weren't in a good place last week." Mina eyes widened. "You both were really quiet, but having your hero as your mentor. Wow, you two are hella lucky. But now it makes a bit more sense how on the first day he was able to causally stop you two from fighting." Not even Aizawa has done that yet. So, Kaminari was about to pull pin on the explosive grenade did you to ask Shifter for an autograph on the first day of school. He asked very teasingly. Bakugo and Izuku choked on their own food, both almost coming close to dying. The hell pikachu. Bakugo yelled, looking to almost strangle Kaminari. Izuku was just about ready to jump across the table and tackle him to the ground. No, we didn't ask him for an autograph. Besides, he doesn't have any merchandise for sale. Unfortunately, Kaminari instinctively hid behind Kirishima as Bakugo yelled at him. Mina just laughed her ass off at the realization that Bakugo unintentionally admitted to wanting some Shepard merchandise and to be knowing that Shepard brought out a soft side of him. Izuku, however, aggressively ate his food. His friends were a bit concerned, but what no one else but Bakugo knew is that both of them never got over the fact that their old man didn't have any merchandise. But no matter how many times they asked in the following years, Shepard always said, "No merchandise of me. I hate the publicity and I'm not dealing with those vultures." It was a rare moment of Shepard putting his foot down, but that never stopped the two of them from holding a tiny grudge on their old man. Meanwhile, the adults talked amongst themselves. Hound Dog was glad to be included as he can't remember the last time he visited here. But it's the least Shepard could do. He owed him for talking to everyone. Present Mike more so tagged along with Aizawa as Shifter knew that deep down those two were an extrovert adopting an introvert friendship. "I've a feeling the kids needed this. Just a time to be kids. No pressure from anything," Shepard said, taking a drink. "By the way, Hound Dog, I appreciate you talking to those students. I agree, I'm actually rather glad you told me ahead of time. Guess I can see why everyone in UA holds you in high regard," Hound Dog proudly said. Shepard had to double back for a second. He wasn't that respected, was he? I mean, yeah, he provides everyone with dossiers and various possible crime scene events, but it's nothing so special or anything like that. I appreciate those words, but yeah, don't even try and deny it, Shepard. Mike told him, "You've had a much bigger impact than you'd realize. You have any idea how many times you've come through for us? Plus the amount of times you've kept a racer alive. Trust me, all the UA staff respects you. But I guess some of us never really told you how grateful we are to you for everything. So thanks, Shifter, for being a damn good hero for all of us." When Shepard came back to UA, Eraser was really the only person he felt comfortable chatting with. Mike, however, was already aware at how good a hero and person Shepard was due to the amount of times he saved Aizawa. Shepard in turn found Mike to be good company. He gave Mike a thank you, telling him he's always happy to help out his friends. And thank God Aizawa immediately activated his quirk because Mike gave a loud YYYEAHHH at the realization that Shepard considered him a friend. Shepard just rubbed the back to his neck. "Oh, I almost forgot he gave Aizawa 2 tickets. Give these to Vlad and Midnight. I know their schedule didn't allow them to come here today, so let them know they can use one on their off days to come here. And yes, absolutely inform them to place their bill on my tab. I'm more than happy to cover for them." Aizawa deadpanned as his eye twitched. "Enough was enough. Okay, Shepard, I gotta ask. How rich are you, really? You never seem to run out of money. And I've seen you maintenance bill. How the fuck are you able to fund half of what we do and still have enough left over to live a good life? A bigger question, when the hell are you gonna give me a raise, damn it? Actually, no, why haven't you given me a raise? We've known each other for over a decade. Do you realize how stressful it is hoarding problem children?" Class 1 had definitely heard that one. Izuku and Bakugo sheepishly didn't say a word. I mean, it's not like Shepard casually gave them each a black credit card like he was giving away candy. Or that fact that their weekly allowance was 1,495,350. And you know, I think it's best of the two of them not say a word about Shepard's infinite money ability. Well, last time I checked, my net worth was around 889,914,000,000,000.10 yen. What? Everyone in the room yelled out in unison. Ida's glasses fell from his face and Momo was just as much at a loss for words. Todoroki's expression didn't much change, keeping the same blank-less face, but was a bit surprised to know Shepard made his father look poor. Both the boys, however, resisted the urge to laugh. All of Class 1 and the teachers just erupted. As everyone bombarded him with questions, he could see Izuku and Bakugo were still sitting down. They were mentally laughing at Shepard right now. All he could do is just smile back at them. It was definitely time to move forward. The sports festival was going to be one to remember. Meanwhile, Kurogiri walked into a dark room. At the center of that room was a chair and a large TV monitor. He sat down as the TV turned on. "Tell me what you've learned, Kurogiri. I've more than given you plenty of time," a mysterious figure said. "Well, I've done my best and searched what I could find, but master the information on this man. It was all heavily classified. All I could really get was his name. Even his quirk was classified, which struck me as odd given how it's just a teleportation quirk. Kurogiri specialized in information gathering and hacking. His quirk made him perfect for reconnaissance missions, and he'd learned well enough how to break through various firewalls. His only true challenge was Principal Netsu, but even then he would be able to eventually break through at least one. But Shepard's file. It was the first time he'd ever seen this kind of classification, which to him made no sense at all. What made this hero so damn special that he had firewalls from various countries protecting him? The dark figure took a sip of his tea. I see. I'm disappointed in you, Kurogiri. This is the first time you've ever failed me. I found it odd that you requested an additional day, and I only did so because you've been so loyal to me, but now. Kurogiri felt the atmosphere change. Despite not being in the same room as this man, he was absolutely terrified. If his body could sweat, it would be releasing an ocean. Now what seems to be the matter? You haven't lost your handkerchief now, have you? No, I. Kurogiri stood up, but he knew to immediately sit back down. He waited for his master to speak as he finished his tea. As I was about to say, now I'm wondering what the next course of action will be, given that the heroes have an unknown on their side. It was because of him that UA was better prepared to deal with us, and he teamed up with Eraserhead, correct? Yes, sir. It was my understanding that they knew each other given their teamwork. But when I looked at his file, there was no mention of a pro hero by the name Shifter. Interesting. So the heroes have an enigma on their side of the chessboard. One who's well protected and isn't afraid to take lethal measures. The dark figure pondered for a moment. First, this man had managed to find out about the infiltration. Then he planned an effective counter with only himself being a casualty. But finding out, he blew Shigaraki's jaw off and not show an ounce of hesitation. He gave a wicked smile. Kurogiri, you say he's protected from various other countries. Hack into their databases to see if there's even a hint of this man. Return to me when you have something. And you don't? Well, I don't need to repeat myself now, do I? Kurogiri stood up and respectfully spoke. No, of course not, but I have one last thing I wish to discuss with you, sir. With your permission, that is. Go on. Kurogiri bowed. What of Shigaraki, sir? What shall we do with him? Nothing, the man said in a very cold tone and uncaring tone. Kurogiri couldn't help but ask, but is he not your heir, sir? Upon hearing that, a dark laugh was heard. Oh, indeed he is. But he needed to learn a valuable lesson. Never assume that victory will always be yours. Had Shigaraki simply approached that hero after the Namu incapacitated, he would have been dead. But instead his arrogance got to him. I'd say he learned well enough. So nothing will be done of Shigaraki. He'll carry that wound as a badge of pride. Am I clear? Kurogiri accept that answer. Unfortunately, Shigaraki did let his emotions get the better of him that day. It almost cost them his life, and more so, it nearly resulted in both of them being captured. The loss of the Namu was also a blow on their part. They still needed to run more tests, it had seemed. I understand, sir, and I shall double my efforts. With your permission, I'll take my leave. Granted. But the Kurogiri had warped out of there, fully intending to find anything in Shifter. Pro underground hero Shifter, for your sake I hope you no longer prove to be a thorn in my side. For the next couple of weeks, Izuku, Katsuki, and the rest of Class 1A were all put through an intense training period, courtesy of Eraser and Shifter teaming up. The class had given them the nickname, the Underground Nightmares. But despite all the rough days, both teachers could tell that every student weren't slacking one bit, not just on the physical but the written portions of their course. Izuku unfortunately couldn't increase his percentage of OFA, but he did improve on using it for quirk burst of energy and minimizing the damage each blow does to his own body. Katsuki wasn't going to let his brother one-up him. He pushed himself further, working on expanding his sweat glands, and the results spoke for themselves. Progress was progress for them. All Might had also made sure to come by Shepard's house every day to check on Izuku's progress on OFA. He was thoroughly impressed with how far he'd come by. His understanding of OFA was, truth be told, nothing short of astonishing. All Might did mention he had a far easier tolerance with dealing with OFA drawbacks, but he couldn't help but feel a bit envious at how quick a learner Izuku was. There was never any doubt he made the right call giving Izuku his quirk, but now the idea of how good a hero he's going to be when he fully masters OFA. All Might was just overjoyed with pride, knowing Midoriya was on the right path. At a secret warehouse. Nothing. Several weeks in, AFO still has nothing on Shifter other than his name and quirk. Kurogiri had only been able to pull a few files, but the information they gave had been all but useless. Each of those files only contained a simple explanation on how Shepard would perform reconnaissance missions. No information on his skills or what he did. This was infuriating for a FO. He always had at least one card to play, but this one underground hero. He was becoming frustrated. This one little pebble on his path to return had caused a nagging sensation for him, like a fly in his ear that wouldn't stop buzzing. Ironically, both shared the same sense of insecurity. While he and Shifter never liked the unknown, Shifter would plan to counter a possible unseen event. AFO, on the other hand, made sure to always have a grasp of each piece on the board. But where else Shifter was driven to do so to improve hero work, AFO was driven for his own petty motives to have the world in his hands and destroy all of hero society. It didn't help that All Might had become more effective in his hero work. It shouldn't be possible. AFO remembered the damage both to them took. He was on constant life support, but he made sure to damage his lung and stomach in the battle. He'd kept an eye on him through the shadows and could tell his time was nearing an end. But that all changed a few years ago, but it was more noticeable now. Two unknowns wasn't something AFO could stand by, and he would get to the bottom of it. But for now he would watch the sports festival to see for any potential quirks. How surprised he would be by the end of the event, however. The day of the sports festival had finally arrived. This was always a big event for Izuku and Bakugo. What no one knew is that this wasn't the first time they'd been in the festival. Ever since they were 8, Shepard would always rent a private booth and take them with him to see each year's festival. And every time the boys would watch the event with absolute glee. They would never once take their eyes off it. Izuku would bring several large stacks of notebooks with him on these days. It was indeed quirk heaven for him. In contrast, Bakugo had his eyes on each fight scene, breaking down each fighting pattern and how they could have done way better. What Shepard didn't know is that by taking them to the sports festival, he'd unintentionally motivated them into wanting to apply and join UA High School, largely due to the fact they would participate one day, but more importantly, they could show off to their dad. During training, having their old man in the room just made them do better. Maybe because he always gave good improvement tips after each session, or simply because they wanted to make him proud. And after a long time coming, today was the day Katsuki and Midoriya would have their chance to do so. All 20 students were in the waiting room. They'd each receive a good luck text from their friends and parents. That helped ease the tension as a few started chatted amongst themselves. There were emotions of nervousness, determination, and conviction, but everyone knew today was the day for them to show everyone what they could do. Katsuki and Izuku sat side by side when they were approached by Todoroki. Bakugo, Midoriya. If I think about it, from an objective point of view, between the three of us I'm stronger than both of you. The fuck you mean by that, you icy hot? Small explosions could be seen from Katsuki hands. You really think you're stronger than me or Izuku? The entire class had their attention, several of them making comments on how this was Todoroki's declaration of war. Katsuki wasn't gonna let that declaration slide though. Todoroki, however, wasn't fazed by Bakugo's threat. Instead, he continued to look at both of them. It's clear that you two are strong, I'm not denying that. But I've noticed both of you were already ahead of everyone on how you use your quirks. But Shepard-sensei has had his eyes on you too, more so than anyone else. Shit, had he really noticed? That definitely made each of them tense up. It's just an observation, I'm not trying to pry or anything. But I will beat you both. Katsuki stepped forward to approach Todoroki, but he stopped when Izuku put his arm in front of him. Todoroki, I don't know what you'll gain with that little declaration of war of yours, but you're right. You are stronger than me. Todoroki only blinked at that comment, but Bakugo didn't like that one bit. Why would Deku ever think he's weakened anyway? Boy, what the hell, you've had your quirk for years and your potential is great, but small sparks could be seen from Izuku as he clenched his fist. My older brother is stronger than you, that's a fact. Also, everyone here is aiming for the top. What kind of a class representative would I be if I didn't try to improve? I'll be giving it my all, making sure I get to stand next to Kaken. And in case you've forgotten, Shepard-sensei doesn't play favorites in his classroom. He has his eyes on everyone. Todoroki only stared at both of them before nodding. Just remember, we're not here to make friends. But the two of you are my biggest competition right now. Before anyone could say anything, President Mike's voice came through the speakers telling everyone that it was time for everyone to make their way to the stadium. It was time. The crowd cheered loudly as the group confidently walked out into the tunnel towards their first sports festival. As each student walked, the crowd's cheer only grew louder. They made their way over to the raised platform where Midnight was waiting, the other kids glaring daggers at Class 1A. Turns out several of the other classes tried to make a declaration of war on Class 1A a few days ago. None of the other class liked how they were given special treatment, few extra off days, and they had their own private fighting instructor. Unfortunately, what those classes didn't know was said private instructor was there to defend Class 1A. He gave all of them one hell lecture on how inconsiderate they were being. The USJ incident was an event no one wished to relive, as what they went through was no one else's business. Any so-called special treatment Class 1 is getting was only due to the unfair incident that had happened them. Shepard questioned just how well would any of you had done if you were in their shoes. Would you even be able to think appropriately? Can any of you confidently say you would have handled the situation better? And he didn't let a single person question why he was Class 1 exclusive instructor. That information was on a need-to-know basis, and none of them needed to know. Now then, Midnight shouted with a very wide smile, welcome to the sports festival. Next to me is Cementos. He and I will be your referee for today, while President Mike, joined by Eraserhead, will be providing commentary throughout the games today. Oh yeah, Midnight. President Mike's voice boomed all over the speakers of the stadium. I'll be providing you all with an amazing public service. And just like Midnight said, here at my side is none other than pro hero Eraserhead. Aizawa gave Mike the biggest I hate you face he could muster. I'm only here because I'm being paid extra. Class 1 definitely let out a laugh at that. They knew exactly who paid him and why. Now, without further ado, Midnight cracked her whip. It's time to hear from this year's student representative. Katsuki, Bakugo, please take to the stand. Class 1 is shit. UA teachers shit. All Might shit. Aizawa shit. Nanzu sips his tea with a grin. Izuku and Shepard. Bakugo was the student representative. Katsuki Bakugo, the boy whose most common and main way of communicating was either by fighting or by yelling. He did have the highest score on the entrance exam, but before Izuku could finish thinking, his brother was already approaching the microphone. "Well, goodbye, Yue. It was truly a blessing to have been a part of your program." The entire arena went silent as Bakugo gave everyone a scowled look. Izuku started to sweat a little, Kirishima being next to him. "Hey, come on man, maybe it won't be bad, you know. I'm only gonna say this one time, so listen well. I'm gonna crush each and every one of you and win this damn thing." "Never mind." Izuku facepalmed so hard he swore he gave himself a red handprint. Shepard could only look in bewilderment as Katsuki had left him speechless with that little stunt. "He is so grounded when we get home." A large series of boos rang from the crowd and the students alike, but Katsuki ignored each and every one of them as he made his way back down to his class. "Kaken, what the hell is wrong with you?" Izuku giving him the side-eye look. Bakugo just rolled his eyes. "Morons should have given me a heads up." Kaminari spoke behind them. "You do know now everyone is gonna come after us, right?" Bakugo only shrugged at his response. "Yeah, so what, Pikachu? You think Class 1 can't handle the extra pressure?" Nina sighed. "Maybe you can, but what about the rest of us? No one's gonna hold back anymore, and we lost our surprise attack moment." Katsuki just gave her a snort. "Did you forget Class 1 was the class that got attacked by villains? Everyone was already watching us from the start. Besides Raccoon Eyes, all those people that are looking to scout for interns expect us to do good. I just gave them all an additional reason not to underestimate us." Kaminari and Mina facepalmed and sighed. Izuku just shook his head in disbelief. "All right everyone, we've kept you waiting, so now it's time to begin. The first event of today will be an obstacle race." Midnight raising her whip towards a large screen that had a wheel. It landed on the words "landed obstacle race." "All you competitors need to do is run obstacle course in a race. Those who come in the top 42 places will move on to the second event." Every student slowly gathered students towards the doorway that led to the course. Katsuki and Midoriya didn't move an inch, not just yet anyway. They were given permission to use their quirks however they saw fit. They only had to make it from point A to B and deal with some bumps on the road. Sounds easy enough. Too easy, and both of them knew it. They each looked at the clock that was counting down. "Hey Kaken." Bakugo turned to see Izuku, raising an eyebrow in confusion. Did he already have a plan in motion? He could tell something was a bit off as his eyes were definitely off track than usual. "For this race, let's not help each other out. Let's try and make it on our own." Bakugo gave him the biggest feral grin he's ever done. Two deciding factors always brought the best in them. One was their father and the second was competing against each other. And to be fair, Bakugo wanted to see what he could do by himself too. "You're on, little bro, just try to keep up." Once the timer hit 0, both of them didn't waste a second. Bakugo exploded high in the air, taking the right side, while Izuku jumped with green light flashing over his body as he made his way to the left side. Flying over everyone else's heads, they avoid each other's paths as the shot straight through the entrance. Unfortunately, both felt a literal chill in the air. They turned and saw Todoroki in the middle running as he was freezing the tunnel behind him. Before they knew it, all three of them made it out the tunnel at the same time. They were neck and neck, Bakugo using his burst speed, Todoroki skating on his ice, and Izuku was jumping left and right. "Wow, what a way to start the race, everyone," Mike shouted as there were small speaker robots with camera attached to them flying past the arena. Bakugo, Izuku, and Todoroki all take an early lead. All three are gunning for that first place, and looks like several other students have made it past Todoroki's ice. One hell of a performance, everyone. It was a good enough tactic for Todoroki, helping him get a decent enough start in the race. Aizawa explained, but he didn't account that some students were able to avoid his ice altogether. As you can see, several Go Class 1 and 1B are already maneuvering through the ice. But that's going to be the least of their problems. The ground shook as everyone noticed several zero-pointers up ahead. They all blocked the sun and locked onto the top 3 runners of the course. Shoto wasted no time in sliding under a zero-pointer. He then used his ice to freeze it. But he wasn't done there. He concentrated well and good and impaled the robot several times. Large spears of ice popped out of the robot, with a large one piercing it, causing it to fall to the ground. Shoto looked at his hand for a second, and he may have got a bit too far as there were small traces of frostbite. But that didn't stop him from moving forward. When Bakugo saw a zero-pointer come at him, he wasted no time in flying high above it. His trajectory had improved tremendously at this point, so much so that turns and maneuverability were no longer an issue on his part. Remembering how much effort to weaken it last time, Bakugo turned his attention to the center eye. Bombarding it with large amount of clusters did the trick as one arm began to malfunction. Once that arm was taken care of, he flew down and hit it with a larger amount of explosions. Sparks began fly out of the robot as it fell down, but that wasn't enough for Katsuki. He flew back up again and charged multiple explosions in his arms before blasting that zero-pointer dead in its center eye. He stood over the robot's destroyed body when he turned to his left to see Izuku. As one of the giants slammed its fist on the ground, Izuku took that opportunity to jump on its arm. He parkour on the robot's arms. The last time he encountered this thing, it took him an arm to beat it. But that was then, and Izuku had made good progression on OFA. He used his quirk to jump up and slam his way on one of the joints of the robot, hitting it with a hard spin kick. That arm fell down and hit the ground hard. Izuku made his way to the next arm, aiming for the joint, only this time he would ricochet from that arm to the center of the robot. Hitting it dead in the eye with 10%, he cracked that robot as it fell down, shutting off completely. Izuku stood over the robot as he looked at Katsuki to his right. They each took a second look at each other, giving off a respective feral grin, but that only lasted for a moment. Both ran and continued on with the race. Christ on a stick eraser, I think I'm gonna need a minute to process what happened. Tell me you saw that. Though my eyesight were unceremoniously lost for a few minutes. Katsuki, Bakugo, Izuku, Midoriya, and Shoto Todoroki just beat 0-pointers like they were a child's play toy. Never have I ever seen anything like this before. Can anyone even match these three right now? Those three have the biggest potential, but I wouldn't underestimate everyone else. Already we can see a few students see the wreckage that those three caused. True enough, some students had made their way to the wreckage, but they all stopped for a second to see how bad the damage was. Class 1 were already aware at how good those three were, but seeing how they didn't need to hold back, it left everyone wondering how big the gap was between the top students and themselves. The next obstacle was a canyon, a walk in the park for Bakugo as he could fly over it. Izuku easily jumped from pillar to pillar while Shoto started to skate on the ropes. Then came the minefield. Each considered their options on how to deal with this final part of the race. But that was short-lived as they all rushed through. It had a free-for-all for first place, alternating between running and fighting, all while avoiding the minefield and each other's blows. At one point, Todoroki got the lead by being just a split second fast on activating his quirk, freezing their feet for a moment. That moment was short-lived as Izuku broke through the ice and charged at him. Managing to catch Shoto off guard, he took the lead, but his brother was hot on his tail and lunged at him with some explosions, securing the lead. They continued this cycle as they were halfway through the field when the other members had managed to catch up. Eraser, just what have you been teaching these students of yours? I'm not taking credit for their determination to succeed on being number one. They each have of their own reason for winning. Besides, you and I both know who's to thank for all this. Izuku knew he had to do something. While they were each ahead of everyone, Izuku could tell if they kept on going they'd lose the lead and would have to contend with the other participants. So he withdrew back for a bit, taking Bakugo by surprise, but unfortunately Todoroki had his attention, so he couldn't really focus on his brother. While those two were fighting, Izuku got into running position. He was about to take a gamble, but always go plus ultra. He closed his eyes and began to channel the flow of OFA to his hands and legs. For him it took a long while to gather that energy, but to the outside world only a split-second hand passed. Once he opened his eyes, he began to sprint. He'd been limiting himself to 10% the entire time, but now he went to his maximum output at 15%. He ran faster than he ever could, sprinting so fast that he'd tripped every minefield but avoid each one. He not only caught up with the other two, but looked back for a second at Bakugo and gave him a smile. That took him back to when they were kids running around in the park. Izuku would always chase after Bakugo, and he in turn would chase after Izuku, always with a smile on their faces, and that was a driving force for them to do better. Izuku took the lead and Katsuki had enough. He ignored Todoroki and began to fly faster. Shoto decided to make an ice pathway for himself to move forward. Izuku ran through the tunnel, pushing himself forward, controlling his breaths and pace when he did it. He made it to first place. Coming in first is none other than Izuku Midoriya. Coming in at second place, Katsuki Bakugo, and in third, Shoto Todoroki. Izuku couldn't believe it. First place. Sure, it was a race, but beating Katsuki and Todoroki this time felt exhilarating. He couldn't stop staring at the widescreen board. There was his name at the top of the screen, and right below his name was his brother's name. He looked at his brother, and very cocky smile started to make its way to Izuku. Hey Kaken. Katsuki turned, and upon seeing Izuku's face, his eye twitched. You better fucking not. Who's the rookie now? You little shit, die. Bakugo charged and tackled him to the ground. The crowd watched as they were rolling around in the grass and were trying to rip each other's heads off. Shepard pinched the bridge of his nose. Correction, both of them are so grounded when we get home. Problem children. Aizawa just slammed his head on the desk while Mike just laughed. What an unexpected turn of events. How about we bid to see who wins this one, everyone? The crowd laughed at that statement, but Aizawa grabbed a book and literally threw it at Mike. Katsuki, Izuku, Aizawa yelled at them over the speakers, stop fighting this instant. Save that energy for the sports festival. You know who is watching you both right now. They remembered Shepard was indeed watching them, and they begrudgingly stopped fighting. Both of the standing up. That was some crazy last-minute move you pulled there, Deku. Care to explain? Katsuki said, patting himself down. It's nothing fancy, I just concentrate the maximum output of OFA for a split second on my legs. Then I released all that energy. It's like I'm momentarily able to reach the next level of OFA, but I'm not doing so. Which means my body isn't as damaged. Right now my legs feel like they're having cramps, and that technique gives me pure tunnel vision, so I still need to work on it. You've been practicing new tricks without me. Bakugo pulled Izuku in for a noogie. Look at my little bro trying to one-up me. Izuku bursted out laughing. He was kinda glad Bakugo wasn't hurt, that he was doing a few moves by himself, but something made him think, Kaken probably has a few moves he's kept secret too. Oh, how right he would be. Soon enough a large crowd would break through the tunnel trying to make it to the finish line. Turns out all three of them has done a pretty good job in clearing the minefield. Alright everyone, looks like it to take us a while to get everyone sorted out. In the meantime we'll take a short break. Midnight as she winked at the camera. Izuku let out laugh. Now that I think about it, we probably gave the old man a heart attack. That was met with Bakugo laughing at the realization. Oh god, yeah, his anxiety must be through the roof by now. Shepard's anxiety had long blasted off into orbit and was now floating in the cold silence of space. A few days ago, Nedzu was drinking his tea when his door opened. "Ah, please come in, Anton. You wanted to see me?" "Yes." Shepard entered the room and sat down across him. Nedzu poured him a cup of tea despite the fact that he was really more of a coffee person. "Indeed I did. I was wondering if you'd agreed to me running security for the sports festival." "I have no issue at all. I was rather surprised you came to me with the idea, but upon thinking I really do believe you'd be the perfect candidate for the job. But may I ask, why bring these three individuals?" Nedzu pulled out a planner Shepard had given him for security. There were three names that had garnered Nedzu curiosity. Rumi Yuzujiyama, Pro Hero Maruko, rank number 5. Tsunagu Hakamata, Pro Hero Best Genist, rank number 4. Keigo Takami, Pro Hero Hawks, rank number 3. Shepard drank his tea with all might, and Endeavor already being there, I'd figure why not add Heroes 3-5. It'll make so they can see who to potentially scout for, but also brings an additional sense of reassurance. "You're worried there may be another villain attack?" Nedzu tilted his head. Shepard's last plan went well, but it did came a cost to himself. And gods be damned if he was going to put his sons through that kind of trauma ever again. Despite there being multiple heroes in the area, Shepard still insisted on having additional reinforcements. "Yes, call it paranoia if you wish, but I'm not leaving things to chance this time. All Might's presence always ensures a sigh of relief for all parties, civilians and heroes, but..." His tone changed to a more grim voice. "You and I sadly know the truth of All Might's condition." Nedzu frowned a bit. "Yes, unfortunately All Might's time is nearing an end. I've heard he's bought himself a bit of a reprieve thanks to you and Night Eye. But I know this is only a temporary solution at best." All Might had become the main reason why villain activity has gone down over the years. He'd been damned to block out the wave of villains that could overflow all of Japan. If they removed him from the equation, it would inevitably lead to a rise in villain activities, and Izuku just wasn't ready. Nedzu knew he still had a lot to learn, but that was one subject he refused to bring up, especially in front of Shepard. Shifter was adamant on the whole "I'm a father first." There was no way in hell Anton was going to let anyone put that burden of a responsibility on his son this soon. Nedzu's eyes sparkled for a second as he stopped to think. He reviewed Shifter's plan several times, and he was impressed at how well thought out it was. Adding the police to the equation and managing to acquire several healers was no small feat to do, but Shifter isn't any normal human. "Tell me you're slowly preparing the top heroes and everyone else to be better equipped for when he retires, aren't you?" Nedzu really was the only individual that could see his entire motives when it came to planning. Eraser being a close second, but the rat was always leagues ahead of everyone else. "Nothing gets past you, Principal. If they can see how good the new generation are doing, perhaps they'll be motivated to work harder and not be so dependent on All Might. And having several heroes get accustomed to teaming up with other people would do well. It's a start, but at least it'll give them something to work with." Nedzu gave him a nod as his tail whipped a bit. Prep time was a luxury Shepard had these few weeks while on bed rest. He began to wander off and asked himself just how many plans did he come up with for the event. "But back to your idea, Shifter. I'll let you be in charge of security. I am curious how you plan to convince these three to attend the festival personally." To that Shepard only gave him a wink before he bowed and excused himself. Nedzu let out a laugh and shook his head in amusement. "Oh Anton, how lucky we are that you're on our side. Convincing Hawks, Genist and Mirko only took one night to do." Hawks knew about Shifter through the infamous story that went around the HPSC, how it was almost brought down in a single night. When Shifter had announced his retirement, a lot of the board members were against it, but Shepard gave them all the one-finger salute and did not look back on his decision to do so. Over the years, though, they wondered if he'd gone soft, so they sent several agents to his house to see what could have possibly caused him to retire. Needless to say, Shepard did not appreciate having several secret agents try and sneak into his house while he was still raising his boys. It all came to an end when one of those agents had turned out to be one of his kids' elementary teacher. So Shepard gave them a taste of their own medicine and a hard reality check. He snuck into every board member of the HPSC house undetected and left a message that they all took to heart. You even think about sending one more agent my way, and there will be a bullet waiting for you all. Then you can see if I've gone soft. They never bothered Shifter again after this, since they knew he much would indeed make good on that promise. Because of that, Hawks had an appreciation for Shifter even before he had met. He was 19 at the time of meeting Shifter, but he already knew who Hawks was, including about his mother and his father. Hawks realized why the HPSC secretly feared him and why they wished he didn't retire. Hawks was damn good at getting intel and being a double agent, but from that one conversation he could tell he couldn't hold a candle to Anton. To his surprise, Shifter didn't harbor any anger towards him. Rather, he knew what it was like to have to deal with politicians who demanded you perform immoral actions for a mission. Shepard did offer to relocate Hawk's mom out of the HPSC reach and to help her get therapy. He even went further ahead and gave him a flash drive that had all the intel the HPSC had on him for leverage, including information on his father. Hearing all that, Hawks just stared in complete bewilderment. This man who could at any point in time kill all the board members had just managed to get him a way out of the HPSC. For the first time, he was quite literally free to fly as he pleased. He happily took Shepard's offer, but instead chose to continue his hero work and be Shepard's inside man on the board. The only difference is now there were no threats. Hawks was free to choose his own path, all thanks to Shifter. To this day, the HPSC still remains unaware of Hawks being a double agent for Shifter. All it really took was one conversation and a bit of an intel exchange, and Hawks was more than ready to attend the sports festival. Best Jeanist took a little more convincing, mostly due to the fact that his schedule offered little free time and largely because Shepard only ever sent his agency intel emails for hero work. Shifter hadn't really ever met Jeanist before. They were in fact opposite, as where else Shepard avoided the public altogether, Jeanist was extremely popular with the public. So they sat down and discussed reasons why it would be to his benefit to attend the festival personally rather than watch through a screen. Shepard told him that 1, the public would see the number 4 hero attend the festival would boost his ratings up, and 2, it would save him a lot of time as he'd personally get to see just how good each individual students would be. Jeanist thought about it, and he knew Shifter made a good point, so he agreed to his plan. Plus, he was grateful to the man who provided helpful information to his sidekicks. Maruko. Oh boy, what a wall of stubbornness this woman was. For one, she would actually ignore any attempts Shifter made at communicating. Second, she was always on the move with taking out villains, so getting her to sit still for a minute was another problem. But Anton had the patience of a saint. Dealing with the US, HPSC, and annoying officials had been good lessons for him. Eventually, Shepard finally managed to get Maruko to listen to him for a minute. She wasn't at all interested in the festival, as she rarely if ever took on sidekicks. Keyword rarely. That small window was all that Shepard needed to know that the option for her to train future heroes was there. Shifter's time, however, was running out, and Maruko was still unconvinced to join. She was seconds from heading out when he made her a bet, 1-on-1. If he could land one blow on her, she'd join, and if she could land one blow on him, then he'd drop the matter entirely. Maruko was a woman of action, and she did notice that Shepard was able to keep up with her throughout the entire time she was on patrol. Something not many heroes or villains could do, so she relented to a sparring match. That one sparring match lasted for 30 minutes, and Maruko was loving it. She may not be the strongest hero, but she always took pride in being one of the fastest. And right in front of her was a man who could match her speed and reaction time perfectly. It was a close one, as both had managed to be neck and neck, but Shifter was just a split second faster than her, allowing him one hit. With a smile, she happily accepted joining, and she informed him to spar some other time with her. He owed her a rematch, much to his frustration. Present time. Maruko jumped up. Damn, these first years are going all out. I like it, especially that spiky blonde hair kid. Best Jeanist brushed his hair. I'll admit they have strong quirks, but a few of their personalities could be improved upon. Well, no turning back now. We did all agree to be here. Hawks was munching down on a piece of chicken. Guess it was worth the time to come here in person. I'm glad you're all pleased. Today's event only just started, Shepard voiced as he entered the private booth he'd rented for them. He made his way to him as Maruko jumped to throw a punch at him, but Shepard shifted out of the way. Hello to you to Maruko, but this isn't the best place to have that rematch. I'll please pull a few strings to have us fight in the arena. Why don't ya? I'm sure we could give everyone one hell of a show, she exclaimed. As much as I'd enjoy such a physically and spiritually taxing fight, that's not exactly why I'm here or why I asked you three to be here. Hawks raised an eyebrow. Figured as much, so why else are we here, Shifter? Nothing so serious, just you three rotating shifts on patrolling the area. Anton gave them each a paper on their schedules and which area to look over. The stadium should allow each of you to stay on duty while also scouting for any potential interns. Any questions before I leave you three? Hawks and Jeanist didn't have any, and Maruko was surprisingly cooperative. He expected her to complain, but she wouldn't mind stretching her legs. With that, Shepard took his leave and made his way to his one private booth. It was the same one he'd always rented each and every year. He sat down and turned his laptop on. Every hero in the stadium emailed him their report to ensure everything was in good condition. He paid several rescue heroes to team up with the police, and he acquired the services of 2 other healers to assist Recovery Girl. Today was running like a well-oiled machine as everything was going along smoothly. Things would be fine, there wouldn't be a villain attack, and even if there was, he made sure everyone was prepared. He took a breath as he finished reading his emails as he looked up and saw the part of the competition to be announced. Cavalry battle. Midnight started to explain as her voice boomed across the arena. Every student will need to make a team of 4. One person must be the rider. If he or she touches the ground, then their entire team is disqualified. Every person shall receive a headband with points on them. Points are determined by your place in the race. The goal for this one is to try and steal points from the other team. 5 points will be given to 42 place. 41 will receive 10 points in each interval. The number increases by 5. In addition, once a team loses all their points, that team is also disqualified. Only the top 4 teams will make it through the final round. I understand now, Ida said. They're ensuring the top competitors don't have too much of an advantage. The ones that came in first are now a target for everyone else. Those that didn't do as well in the race now have a chance to catch up. Well, Midori, I guess you're gonna be target number 1 then. I'll try not to get in your way then. Shinso gave him a small elbow nudge. And we have a surprise twist. Midnight winked with a very devilish smile. Izuku Midoriya. Wait, why was Izuku being signaled out? For coming in first place, you will have 10 million points. Izuku felt everyone stare right back at him. They were all gunning for that 10 million since it would be a guarantee to the finals. Damn it, whose bright idea was it to give first such a damn high point value? Shepard looked over the event planner and could see President Mike's stamp of approval for this idea. I'm ripping his entire hair out for this. Midnight cracked her whip. All right, you all have 15 minutes to form a team and go. The students all went their separate ways, but Izuku could feel the pressure. The majority of everyone didn't want to team up with him. He wanted to team up with Shinso, but he told him he'd rather not have a target over his head. Izuku didn't hold it against him and wished him luck. Ida has already been selected by Todoroki, so he couldn't ask him for help. I don't see why you're getting so nervous. We are gonna destroy everyone, Deku. Izuku yelped when Bakugo suddenly stood next to him. Kaken. Wait, what do you mean we? It's when someone refers to more than one person. Guess you haven't been paying attention in class, dumbass, he said in a very sarcastic tone. Izuku just stood there surprised. Sorry, it's just I thought you'd want to try to do this course alone like a last time. Plus I'm worth 10 million, so. Bakugo just gave him a slap upside the head. Yeah, for the race, but not for this one. And besides, he shot Izuku a feral grin. If everyone's gonna go after you, that'll give me the perfect opportunity to bust some skulls with my quirk. Well, Dad wouldn't approve of the busting skulls options, but hell yeah, Kaken. Let's partner up. That's what I just said, nerd. Hey Bakubro, Kirishima appeared. The fuck do you want, shiny hair? The name's Kirishima, man. And our hairstyle is really similar. But was just gonna ask if I could be on your team with Midoriya. Izuku blinked in astonishment. You really want to team up with us? Kirishima responded with a toothy smile. Absolutely, man. You two are crazy strong, plus I want to see how far I can push my quirk today. Izuku rubbed the back to his head. Well, Bakugo interrupted. I say we let him in. Both of them needed to process what they just heard. Bakugo was okay with having someone besides Izuku help them. Was he hit on the head? Could you two fuckers close your mouths before a fly causes you to choke? Look, Deku, he kept up with me at the USJ and he was all for your plan to keep mindfucker safe, remember? That's good enough for me, so that makes 3. And boy did Kirishima look like a happy pit bull at hearing this. He grew a big giant wide smile and Izuku could swear he was shedding manly tears. Bakugo told him not to make a big deal out of it, but Izuku gave him a going soft look. Hey Izuku. Midoriya turned around and saw Uraraka running to him. She panted a bit hopefully. I'm not too late. Izuku titled his head curiously. To late for what? To join your team, silly. She laughed as she gave her a smile. I know a lot of people are probably gonna go after you, so let me help you out. Yes, absolutely. Izuku perked up like a light bulb as he offered her a high five, which she immediately accepted. Bakugo snorted at the fact that without hesitation he said yes to having Round-Face join them. Guess she was okay. She'd been very supportive to Izuku during classes and he could get by that. Alright, dumbass, what's the plan? Izuku turned around. Kaken, are you insinuating that I've already come up with multiple strategies for us to not only dominate but also maintain first place the entire time? All in the short span of our team being formed in no less than a minute. Bakugo gave him a deadpan expression. Because you'd be absolutely right in that matter, so here's the plan. Shepard felt like someone had just put the fear of God in him. Izuku, kid, dearest son of mine, please be gentle. Izuku watched the countdown begin. He scanned every team out there. Thankfully, he knew about his class's quirks. While Class 1B was a bit of a mystery, he heard enough from his old man what to expect, and each had their eyes on them. Todoroki's stare looked it could kill you. He also noticed a yellow-haired boy from Class 1B eyeing them. It was clear, everyone wanted the 10 million, but what no one knew was that they'd already fallen into Izuku's plan. Kirishima was at the front. Bakugo was the rider, taking advantage that Kirishima didn't run the risk of getting hurt by his explosion. Uraraka took the right wing while Izuku took the left wing. They had mobility, offense and defense all covered. They only had to last for 15 minutes. You boys ready to kick some ass? Uraraka asked, readying her position. Fuck yeah, round cheeks. Bring it on. We got this, you three. The countdown finished. The chaos immediately started as every team turned their attention to them and charged straight at them. Izuku didn't even hear the loud beep finish before the chaos started. In almost perfect sync, every team turned their attention to the 10 million and started to charge. Their plan was already in motion as he watched nearly 40 people charge directly at them. Wait, letting the other teams get closer. Timing was key for Izuku's plan to start, and he couldn't risk the other teams having time to counter his strategy. Just a little more. Kirishima hardened. Uraraka got her quirk ready. Now KACCHAN. In that instant, Bakugo let out a large explosion covering the area with smoke. Everyone was blinded as they tried to recover. They noticed someone pop out of the smoke. Katsuki shot into the air. Oi, you fuckers looking for this. As the attacking teams saw Katsuki had the 10 million points in around his neck. Try and take it from me, you fucking extras. And that was Izuku's cue. He activated OFA and made his way out of the smoke, zigzagging through the arena. Uraraka would give several riders a slap on the knee, and once they were a good distance away, she made them all float. Bakugo knew it was his turn next. He flew at one of the flying riders, stepped on them, and took off their headband. He then began to play a game of leapfrog with the other floating riders, taking each headband and pushing them down hard on the floor. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, and fuck you other extras, landing safely on his teammates. Once Uraraka released her quirk, they all landed on the ground, causing the enemy teams to be disqualified. Would you look like it, that everyone? In less than a minute, Team Bakugo just took out 12 teammates. Everyone's gunning for that 10 million, but they're not making it easy. But wait, hold on just a second. Shoto didn't join the others in going for the 10 million. No, he'd rather wait it out, especially since Izuku and Bakugo were on the same time. His team was also solid, having Kaminari on his left to ensure a long-range attacker and cover his blind side. Yaoyorozu was to his right as she'd be their primary source of defense, while having Eda as their main source of mobility was extremely helpful, to say the least. He was the only class member that surpassed Izuku's speed. While the other teams charged, Shoto used this opportunity to freeze several of them on their feet. Ida moved forward. Eda's engine began to rev up as he started to speed up. Yaoyorozu, get ready to make something shock-resistant and strong. Some of the other teammates were starting to thaw out of his ice. Unfortunately for them, he came prepared. Kaminari, get. Oh yeah, you can count on me, he confidently said as he began to get some sparks on his body. He sent a wave of electricity at the people that were frozen. Yaoyorozu soon made a shock blanket to protect her, Shoto and Ida from Kaminari's lighting. They then charged and took several headbands from the other players. He may not be going for the 10 million from the start, but he might as well build up some more points and take out the competition. Team Todoroki just took out 7 opposing teams' headbands. What a combination of quirks right there. Seems like they're only just getting started and they're about ready to start dishing out some pain. Class 1 isn't holding back right now as half the competition just went out. Todoroki is learning from his mistakes. During the obstacle course, he noticed several students managed to break from his ice. By having Kaminari shock them, that prevented any possible escape this time. A brilliant way to improve in such a short time. I'm almost impressed. Bakugo led his team out into the center of the field. Around him he could see quirks all over the arena. The rest of the team started to battle for what few points were out there, seeing as they'd realize only one team could only have the 10 million. And after that little stunt, everyone knew that to go for the 10 million was at your own risk. Izuku told his team to halt for a moment. They finally had some room to breathe. Uraraka, you good? Izuku glanced at her, making sure she wasn't getting nauseous. Oh yeah, I can definitely keep on going, don't worry. Besides, seems like the rest of the teams have given up on us. Katsuki snorted. Hell yeah, eliminate a lot of teams early to take out the weak competition. Anyone is welcome to take these points from us, if they even can. Kirishima just smiled. Damn bro, pretty manly speech right there. And Mido bro, you came up with a good plan. Has anyone ever told you you're an evil genius? Actually, Bakugo laughed. Huh? Calling my baby bro a genius? Bakugo gave Izuku head a pat. Here that Deku, it took 14 years, but you've finally grown a brain. Izuku's eye twitched. Katsuki knew that he couldn't drop him or risk being disqualified. Oh hardy Harkaken. But between us, I'm the one coming up with the plans. Guess me and the old man are still waiting for you to grow your brain. The hell did you say, nerd? I can't hear you from all the way down there. Guess it sucks being the short one of the family. Listen here, you Pomeranian. Guys, can you not, save it after we win the cavalry battle? Uraraka demanded. Besides, we're not in the clear yet. I thought we were gonna win this. We are, Izuku and Bakugo said in unison. To say that Bakugo's team had everyone on edge was an understatement. They stood in the center to welcome any challengers, and while no one did, them being in the middle of the arena put them more. Would they just stand there and wait it out? Would they act, and if they did, who would be their victim? Furthermore, could anyone even try and take them out? Eliminating the majority of the teams was always part of their plan, but Todoroki had contributed to Izuku's plan. He knew Shoto would try and take out any opposing teams because his focus was on the 10 million. One issue, however, both opposing teams knew that their members covered each other's weaknesses. It was battle Izuku would rather avoid fighting for now at least. I see Class 1A as arrogant as ever. What, you think you're better than us just because you fought some villains? A yellow hair boy from Class 1B exclaimed as he was approaching him. Arrogant. Class 1A was forced into do or die situation. They all fight villains together, real villains that weren't afraid to try and kill them. Both he and Izuku fought off against a monster that was bigger than All Might. Class 1A wasn't arrogant, they damn well earned the right to be here more than anyone else. This Class 1B member had nothing on them. The Class 1B lunged at Katsuki, managing to graze him a bit. Katsuki retaliated, but he was hit with an explosion. That attack had stopped him dead in his tracks as he blinked. Kirishima yelled, "Hold on, did he just use your quirk?" "Yeah, I saw that," Katsuki yelled. He growled and threw an explosion at him, but it was blocked. "Wait, blocked? But how did?" "You have some interesting quirks, I'll admit, but mine is superior," the Class B copycat said. "Hardening? That was Kirishima quirks. Don't tell me can. It's a copy quirk," Izuku exclaimed, "and by the looks of it he needs to touch you to use it." "Oh look, someone in Class 1A has a bit of a brain. Aren't you the boy who got second place at the entrance exam? And here you are getting first place on a race. Are you an overachiever, or am I sensing some inferiority complex with you?" Well, this guy was getting on both of their nerves. Was he trying to rile them up because it was slowly working, and what was that inferiority complex? Izuku was far from inferior, quirkless, or no, he fucking proved how determined and better he was than a lot of people. "The hell did you say, you copy freak?" "I'm quite sure I didn't stutter, and the name's Monoma Blasty." "Kaken, calm down. He's just trying to goad you into making a bad decision," Izuku told him. "Yeah, Kaken, calm down, why don't you?" Monoma said tauntingly. Izuku's eye twitched. Only he could call Bakugo Kaken. "Okay, let's just stick back to the original plan, guys." As much as Bakugo wanted to blast this guy, he knew that if they lost focus on Izuku's plan, the chances of winning would go down. Icy Hot was technically their main competition, but they weren't prepared to take him on just yet. Izuku did reassure him that they'll have their chance to beat half and half, so he followed through. Any other person who told Bakugo to let it go would have been met with a hell no, but Bakugo knew better than anyone that if his brother had a plan, he'd follow it. But there was one unforeseen hiccup in Izuku's plan. Something he didn't account for: Monoma's big mouth. You know, with all the special treatment Class 1A is getting, one would think they'd be good. But from what I heard, they couldn't even keep their precious sensei from getting hurt. Either Class 1A is inferior, or maybe Shifter is just a terrible hero. Bakugo and Izuku just looked at this copy-kind user with pure rage. Flashbacks of what happened that day began to flood their mind. The near-lifeless body of Shepard was still very much fresh in their memories. But the worst of it all, they still remember how empty his eyes were when he was unconscious. He did not just insult their dad during an event that was the worst feeling of their lives. "Deku, we're gonna change your plan for a bit." As larger sparks began to pop from his palms, Izuku's entire body was glowing as sparks of lightning would flicker. "Yeah, murder this fucking extra." Shepard stood up from his seat and was dreading what was about to happen. He only ever saw those looks whenever his boys heard someone insult him as a parent or teacher. Fuck. Kirishima and Uraraka both shared a nod. They may not have the bond that Izuku and Bakugo had, but they still greatly respected Shepard. Uraraka was the only one of the three who didn't see how hurt Shepard was. When she asked Sue about it a few weeks ago, her usual calm demeanor broke as her face went completely pale. She told her that Shepard was barely alive, and they could have sworn he stopped breathing. Uraraka could only stare at her in disbelief at the thought of one of her teachers dying. "All right, nerd, you ready? Like you even need to ask. Kirishima, keep your hardening on at all times." "Roger." Uraraka, when I give the word, make Kaken floatless for 20 seconds. "Say no more, Izuku." They all charged at Monoma's team. Once they were in range, Bakugo jumped up and went to hit him with his explode. But Monoma made a shield to stop him. Katsuki had anticipated this and would use that shield as a stepping stone to jump over and get behind Monoma. "Now Uraraka." And with that signal, she immediately made him float. Bakugo wasted no time in using his explode barrage combo. And while Monoma reacted by using hardening, the same couldn't be said for his teammates. Turns out Bakugo was making sure the other Class 1B extras got hit with some small side explosion. The other teammates noticed the far larger explosions that Bakugo was making, and everyone turned their eyes to Team Monoma versus Team Katsuki. And Katsuki was not letting up one bit. Even Todoroki's team stopped to see why he was going all out. Kirishima charged at them. Tsuburaba made another glass shield, but Kirishima broke through it like wet tissue paper. He then reached out and grabbed his headband, taking his points. Monoma groaned, "This is way too much." As Kirishima's quirks deactivate, but how? Bakugo used the opportunity to lunge at them and grab 3 headbands from him. "You may be able to copy our quirks, but you have none of our training in using them." He propelled himself back, giving Monoma a hard push that caused him to land on the floor. "Team Monoma is out," Midnight announced. Momoma's team looked down to see all of their headband had been stolen. Seems as thought while Bakugo was gaining Monoma's attention, the opposing team snatched all of their headbands. As they all stared in disbelief at how fast they'd lost Izuku, and Bakugo looked back at them, "Team, don't you ever say that our mentor is a terrible hero." They both shouted for everyone else to hear. Shoto took this as his chance to make an ice wall in front of Bakugo's team. "I'll be taking those 10 million now." Bakugo just gave him a feral look. "You're welcome to try Ice Hot." There was only 5 minutes left, but Izuku knew they had a 50/50 chance at beating Shoto's team. Regrettably, Izuku knew that Shoto's team was the only other team that covered offense, defense, and maneuverability. But they didn't have to win, they only had to stall. Izuku had done the math, and even without the 10 million they were guaranteed a spot in the finals. But he said they were gonna keep that headband all the way, and he meant it. "Kaminari, send a bolt now," Shoto told him, and Kaminari directed a bolt of lightning at Team Bakugo. They shifted towards the right to avoid it, but Shoto was fast on them with another wave of ice. Seeing no other option, the team charged right through it. Kirishima running headstrong while Bakugo used his explosions to help break through. Shoto didn't know what to make of what was happening. They were charging through his ice without an ounce of hesitation. He knew he had to act fast to charge forward, but make sure you stay away from Uraraka reach. Shoto was fully aware that if Uraraka took away its maneuverability, then they were done before. Both teams started to charge at each other, neither side relenting. Just as they were moments from colliding, Bakugo's entire team had jumped over them. Izuku pushed himself up. Combined with Bakugo's explosions and Uraraka's quirk, they were able to fly overhead with ease. Once they landed, they turned around and bolted for Shoto's team. "Todoroki, our flank is open," Momo shouted. "Damn it, Kaminari, can you use another bolt?" "Not unless you want me spacing out Shoto." "Todoroki, I have an idea. It may give you a chance for the 10 million. Todoroki was running out of options. Bakugo's team was catching up, and he didn't want to risk losing any points. "Go ahead, Ida." As his team turned around to meet Bakugo's team, Ida's engine began to rev up more so than last time. "Everyone hold on." Within a second, he'd blitz past them, Todoroki using this opportunity to grab one of Bakugo's headband. Once they zoomed past, the Shoto's team was shocked. "How did?" Ida played for a bit. "I'm able to maximum the speed and output of my engines to go faster than I thought possible, but only for a moment. That moment was all we needed. Unfortunately, I won't be able to move for a while." Todoroki held the headband tight, but as he looked at it, he saw it was only worth 20 points. But how? They turned around, and that the 10 million was around Uraraka's neck. While they were up in the air, Bakugo gave her that headband, knowing that Ice Hot wasn't gonna risk getting near her. The buzzer soon rang as Todoroki came to a stop. That was twice he was bested by Izuku and a Bakugo. But his team made it to the finals, and Bakugo's team still kept the 10 million points the entire time. He would have his chance to fight one of them. But after 2 competitions, did he miscalculate? He was sure he was stronger than both of them, so why did they both beat him? What did they have that he didn't? Bakugo got off as Izuku was giving Uraraka and Kirishima a high five. He knew Izuku's plan would work from the start, but beating everyone and making a hard statement that they were the best was fucking perfect. He was still pissed at Copykine's comment, but they made it clear that you don't insult our teacher like that. But what really has him going was Icy Hot. His team came in second, but those 5 minutes fighting him, what an adrenaline rush for Katsuki. He felt excited knowing that Izuku was gonna make it, and that maybe, just maybe, he could get the chance to fight him one-on-one. To all the teams that made it, congratulations. Midnight spoke. "Now we're just gonna take a 1-hour lunch break as we sort out who's gonna fight who in the next round." Izuku was about ready to head to the food court when he heard someone call his name. Midoriya. Todoroki had approached him. "Could I speak with you alone for a moment? Could I speak with you alone for a moment?" "Hey." Izuku looked at him dumbfounded for a moment. Sure, I guess. I mean, they're gonna announce who's fighting who after lunch anyway." Katsuki raised an eyebrow, but Izuku gave him a don't worry look as they started to walk off. Bakugo watched them leave the field. Don't worry. Yeah, like hell he was gonna let Izuku get ambushed by half and half. They were guaranteed a spot in the final. That match is clear, but was Ice Hot trying to get into Izuku's head? Fuck it, knowing Deku, he's probably go on a long muttering for an hour or so. Bakugo started to make his way out of the field too. Wonder what that was about. Uraraka questioned Kirishima by her side. Yeah, hopefully Todoroki isn't mad at Madabro. I mean, his team won second place and all. Kirishima gave a nervous response. I guess we can hope Todoroki doesn't do anything, but something tells me Bakubro is already on it. Uraraka nodded. Yeah, you're right. But Kirishima, we did it. We're going to the next round. I'm so pumped. He gave her one toothy grin. OMG Sam. I can't believe this is happening. And hey, if we fight each other, I'll try to go easy on you so you don't have to break a nail. Oh, you are so going down for that comment. Todoroki just couldn't wrap his mind around it. He'd seen everyone in class 1 and they weren't stronger than him. From the first day, none of them had a grasp of their quirks like he did. All except for 2 students, Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo. Individually, he felt confident enough to beat them. But when they fought together, he had to admit their teamwork was nothing short of flawless. So why? Why did he lose to them twice? How did they make such improvements too? Coming in 3rd at the race and not able to steal the 10 million points. He had to get a better understanding of why they were so good. What was? You wanted to talk alone, Todoroki? Izuku asked him as they were in one of the side tunnels of the arena. Todoroki came back to reality. He hadn't realized he was thinking to himself for too long. Yes, you and Bakugo, your brother I mean. You both fought really well back there. Yeah, we bring out the best in each other when we're side by side. It's not just that. You were several steps ahead of me. Not just me but everyone. You knew how to play the first and second event perfectly well. Izuku tilted his head sideways and, I've been taught analysis and planning by the best. Shoto looked down at his hand. You've been taught well then. Each plan of yours plays out perfectly. You're able to tell what will happen moments before it does. He clenched his fist in a bit of frustration. But that's not your quirk. You've definitely put a lot of effort into analyzation and quirk breakdown. But your power, it's very similar to All Might's. Izuku did his best not to react, but his eyes gave a small flinch. Did Shoto manage to figure it out? Well, he is one of the few students that got in on recommendation alone, and he's been near the top since Izuku first saw him. Well, maybe there, but there's so many other quirks that have similarities with one another. Some quirks are so similar that you can't even tell the difference. But others do have a clear, distinct difference. Izuku was trying his best to cover up the OFA secret. It hadn't been hard to do so. But this was the first time in a while anyone confronted him about it. Todoroki looked up at Izuku. You may be right, but All Might did start to work here the same time you entered into UA. A student born with a power similar to his. Oh, actually. Furthermore, Todoroki interrupted him. He's always by your corner whenever he teaches. He and Shepherd Sensei always seem to have their eyes on you and your brother anytime they teach. Matter of fact, on the first day, Shepherd Sensei could already stop you two from fighting. Well, Kaken and I did say he saved us when we were kids. Izuku immediately responded. Yes, you did, but both of you picked up on his lessons far too well. It's as if you'd already done them before. I'll admit it took me a while to memorize his patterns, but there's some similarities between how you two fight when I compare it to Shepherd Sensei. He looked Izuku dead in the eyes. Midoriya. Izuku began to slightly panic internally. Shit, don't tell me he actually. Whose secret love child are you, Shifters or All Mights? Izuku.x has stopped working. Please leave your message as he kindly tries to bring his soul back to reality. Inai. I asked which, but Izuku cut him off immediately. No, I heard you the first time and I'd rather you never asked me that again, Shoto Todoroki. Izuku was still trying to wrap his head around what Shoto just asked him. All Might's power and I are similar, nothing else, Todoroki. I guess that's why he knows how to train my quirk better. The similarities have definitely helped me improve. And Shepherd, well, he looks out for everyone in his own way. His class, the teachers at UA, and he even goes out of his way to help other pros. I mean, you are aware at how much information he distributes to the heroes of Japan, right? Shoto stood there listening to Izuku. And he was right about Shifter. Despite the long, brutal training these past few weeks, Shifter had always been there to make sure no one ever had any permanent damage to their body. And at the end of each day, he gave each student a small pamphlet on how to improve on their quirks. Hell, he was able to perfect his ice skating because of Shifter. Those turns have always been a problem for Shoto. I see. Forgive me for the misunderstanding. He paused to take a look at his left side. There was a brief silence before Shoto broke it. Midoriya, have you heard of quirk marriages? Midoriya blinked for a second. Researching quirks eventually lead him to find out about quirk marriages. Couple decades ago, after quirks were discovered, they were very popular. That changed over time, as nowadays it's considered unethical, taboo in today's society. Two people would marry with powerful quirks in the hopes that their kids would inherit a stronger version of their power. Let me guess, your parents. Todoroki gave him a small nod. My father had hoped to create the perfect child. A child who could rival and surpass All Might. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings. They each only have an ice or a fire quirk but me. I was the perfect combination. He got what he wanted. Once my quirk manifested, he shunned my siblings to the side and began to force me train. I barely interacted with them as kids. Hell, it's difficult for me to even talk to them now. Shoto had to control his breathing for just a moment before he continued. Every moment he pushed me beyond my limits. Every night I'd go to bed in pain, and every day I'd wake up and realize that each day would be worse than the last. Izuku shook his head. No one should have to go through that. That's not even the worst part of it. My mom got the worst of it. She was driven insane each day. I can't ever remember having a memory where my mom isn't crying. But then one day she snapped. She couldn't take it anymore. She poured boiling hot water on my face, lightly touching his scar as he continued. He took her away from us. He sent her to a mental hospital. I haven't seen her since that day. It's why I refuse to use my fire to fight. He wants me to be a hero. I'll be a hero, but I'll do it without using his quirk. I'll use my mom's quirk to be a better hero than he could ever be. Izuku saw Shoto was out of breath. He could also see that he was shaking. Small amounts of frostbite were appearing on his hand. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Todoroki. Thank you. Shoto's eyes widened to that statement. What did you say? Izuku smiled at him. That was a lot to talk about, but what I meant is thank you for trusting me with a bit of your past. You've been through a lot and it hasn't been fair to you. Suppose it's only fair I do the same. Did you know for the longest time my quirk didn't appear? Shoto looked at him confused. After everything he said, after everything Shoto just told Izuku, he thanked him. It just didn't make sense to him. The feeling of validation was something he'd never come across. Sure, his teachers gave him compliments of his quirk, but to be thanked for something like this. Shoto was more stunned at Izuku's own question. You're a late bloomer. Izuku nodded. Yeah, my quirk awakened a few months before the exam. Todoroki blinked and for the first time showed more emotion than he ever had. His eyes widened and his jaw dropped. But that was, you're telling me that you've only had a quirk for less than a year. Yeah, I've lived the majority of my life quirkless. I've had to deal with that discrimination for so long. Despite it all, I still applied to UA. Quirkless or no, I was determined to get in. Thankfully, I had Kaken to help me through all that, but we had someone else too. Our old man. If it wasn't for him, I probably would have given up on my dreams a long time ago. After all, the world can't accept a quirkless as a hero, much less recognize them as a human being. Our old man. Are you and Bakugo adopted? Izuku laughed a bit. Yup, me and Kaken are adopted. And let me tell you, we're so lucky he's in our lives. He didn't just help me, he helped Kaken with his quirk and personality too. Whenever he's by our side, anything feels possible. I assumed you call Bakugo your brother as a childhood friend, but if I could ask, what happened to your birth parents? Izuku's face changed to a very somber look. 11 years and it still hurts so much to think about. They died when we were both 5. But thankfully we got adopted by the best parent ever. It was rough for both of us, but he saved us from so much pain. Our old man would fight the entire hero society to keep us safe. He couldn't help but laugh at that last comment. When he and Bakugo found out Shepard fought Kamui Woods and Death Arms in their defense, the boy's exact words were, "Dad, you're fucking awesome, you know that." Oh, Shoto may not be able to read emotions well, but even he knew that was personal to ask him. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring up a bad memory. And I appreciate you telling me about yourself, but this doesn't change anything. You and your brother are obstacles I'm going to overcome. He turned as he headed back to the arena. I'm going to fight you both and beat you both. I'll win Midoriya. Once Shoto left, Izuku turned around and made his way to the corner of the tunnel. How much did you hear? Katsuki was standing by the wall. Got here around the secret love child part. It took everything I had not to jump out and slap Icy Hot's face with that stupid comment. Izuku sighed. Yeah, I think my brain needed to reboot when he asked me that. Dad would have such a laugh if he heard that. The two started to walk. I mean, yeah, he would if he wasn't overwhelmed with anxiety right now. Bakugo smirked, courtesy of the Wonder Duo. Izuku offered him a quirk high five, which Bakugo happily accepted. Damn straight nerd. As they walked and were about to make their way to the food court, they heard someone call to them. There they are. They both heard a female voice call out to them. They each turned around to see an orange-haired girl accompanied by a guy with messy silver hair and very thick eyelashes. Can we help you? Izuku asked. My name is Itsuka Kendo, class representative of 1B. The silver-haired boy spoke, and I'm the deputy of class 1B. Tetsu. The hell do you two want? Katsuki said, annoyed as he just wanted to eat. Kendo spoke. We just wanted to apologize for what Monoma said to you at the cavalry battle. He's always had this mindset that class A and B needs to have this rivalry. Tetsu added his voice, which if we're being honest, we're okay with a friendly rivalry. But not at the expense of insulting your teacher like that. They both bowed in front of them. We apologized for his actions. Both stared at them. What he said was beyond uncalled for. Making light of someone's possible death was never okay, especially if that someone is a teacher. Your apology is noted and heard, but what he said isn't right. Izuku had a bit of anger in his eyes. The memories of his old man hurt were still very fresh. Even if he wanted a rivalry with our class, he took things way too far. We realized that. Kendo said. Vlad King told us about what happened. It's why he was adamant we leave class 1 alone and be considerate about your feelings. Katsuki snorted. Guess copy freak didn't get the memo. No, he didn't. We've already spoken about it with our teacher. Vlad said he'd handle Monoma, but we wanted to apologize to you two about it. Tetsu said. Bakugo started to walk away, waving them off as he didn't want to talk about this event. Look, we appreciate what you two are doing, really. And the whole rivalry with NB of it motives everyone to do better than fine. I mean, we're all looking to be heroes in the end. However, if we ever find out your class does something like that again, we will engage all-out war with you. Kendo nodded. That's fair, we won't take any more of your time. Just know Class 1B won't bring it up again. She began to walk away as Tetsu joined. Izuku caught up to Bakugo, but before either one could say anything, the nearby elevator door opened. Young Midoriya, young Bakugo are both here. The boys both froze like they were deers staring down the headlights of a car. All Might, why are you here? Lunch. Care to join me? All Might asked as he was holding several bags of sushi. They followed him to an elevator that took them all the way to the top floor. All Might lead them both to a familiar hallway that they immediately recognized. Ain't no fucking way, Katsuki proudly said as he and Izuku rushed to open a door of the booth nearby. The very same booth that Shepard had rented year after year for the boys. When they opened it, they saw their old man typing away at a laptop. He turned to see his boys come and figured you'd want to reminisce about old times. Boys, now come in and eat. They all sat down and began to eat. Being in this room was definitely nostalgic. 7 years of watching the festival and now they're actually performing in it. Sushi and the 4 of them here. It was definitely the convention all over again. So Izuku started to ask, did you see us out there, old man? Shepard gave him a raised eyebrow look. Let me stop and think for a second. Did I see my 2 kids race against each other, blow up several robots, engage in a small fight, and perform excellent teamwork on national TV? The sarcasm from his voice was quite obvious. You know, I think I'd remember seeing something like that happening. Both of them had a snarky grin as they laughed. Their goal was always to impress the old man, but they were definitely adding shades of anxiety his way. Shepard facepalmed. I swear you're both grounded for life when we get home. Worth it, they said in unison, giving a high five. All Might couldn't help but laugh at the situation. Shep, you didn't expect your kids to hold back. You know them to be very competitive. Yagi, you are not helping me right now. I hope you realize that. Ah yes, well that was indeed my intention. Giving Shepard a thumbs up. The boys couldn't hold back their laughter, as Shepard could only face palm. All Might was the senior in charge here, not him. Once they finished eating, the boys began to reminisce over being in the same room. Katsuki teased Izuku over not having his mountain of notebooks this time. A tease that was met with Midoriya tackling his brother to the ground as they were now apply wrestling holds on each other. All Might and Shepard could only sigh in desperation as they'd hoped the boys would be on their best behavior for today. What a miscalculation that was, but eventually they did stop fighting and sat back down. Oh, that reminds me, I got you both something. I was gonna save it for the end of today, but screw it. He pulled out 2 boxes. Go on, open them, boys. They looked at each other, not expecting a gift, but they shrugged their shoulders. When they opened the boxes, they couldn't believe their eyes. Inside was Shepard's jacket, but for matching Izuku and Bakugo's size. Old man, this isn't a prank, is it? Izuku asked, holding the jacket close. Of course it isn't. But why give this to us now? Why not wait after we win the festival, old fart? Because it's my way of saying thank you for letting me be a part of your lives. He gave them each a big giant smile. Dad, Shepard's smile only grew wider. Well, you gonna try them on so we can take a family photo or what? Absolutely. Shoto sat down as he ate alone. His conversation with Izuku had left him thinking to himself. He'd just told him about how terrible his father was to him, how his own mother had scarred him, and Izuku could only thank him. Because I trusted him, Shoto said mentally, but that didn't make sense. They'd never really spoken up until now, and he saw Midoriya as a rival. Someone he needed to beat. He needed to show he was the strongest, and he would do it with his mom's power, not his father's. He looked up and saw his classmates. They were all discussing the upcoming events and how to improve on their quirks for the future. We're not here to make friends. Those words stuck with Shoto. He wasn't here to befriend anyone. Not like he even knew how to interact with people. He could barely talk to his own siblings, but the conversation he had with Midoriya, it was oddly nice. He closed his fist for a moment. Today Izuku was an obstacle, a step for him to the best. His next obstacle would be Bakugo, as he knew those two were the only real challenge in his path. He stood up and began to make his way back to the arena. Izuku, Bakugo, I'm taking you both down. Present Mike's voice came boomed out the speaker. All right, everyone. Just a reminder to all competitors, you've got 10 minutes left before we continue on with the event. Be sure you're out on the field. That's your cue, boys. Wouldn't want to be late now, would you? Both of them gave Shep their new jackets and were about to make their way to the door. They stopped and turned to look at their old man. What is it? Shepard asked, a bit worried that maybe they were nervous for today. But they rushed him, not expecting being hugged. Shepard was soon tackled off his feet by the force of both of them. Thanks, Dad, for never giving up on us. They buried their heads in his shoulders. He smiled as he huffed a bit for air, ruffling the back of their heads. Go out there and kick some ass, you two. I'll always be rooting for you, both of you. They smiled back at them, but before leaving they ran to All Might, giving him a hug too. You better be watching us, to Uncle Toshi. Before All Might even had a chance to talk, they both left and bolted to the nearby elevator. All Might was left there stunned. They called him Uncle. Truth be told, he had started to see himself as an inspiration to other students. He'd accept the role of teacher and had grown to fond of the role. But being called Uncle, The idea had never even remotely come to his mind. Yet here he was, allowed to share in a moment with Shepard's kids. Shepard sat down, pulling out his laptop. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you're trying to steal my kids from me, Yagi. Was this your master plan all along? All Might screeched and coughed up some blood as he began to panic. What? No, of course not. I'd never do that to you, Anton. I just didn't expect them to call me uncle. He immediately bowed his head. I'm still eternally grateful you put your trust in me for protecting your kids. They're amazing young boys, and they're also my students. And All Might's muttering was interrupted by the sound of Anton's hysterical laughter. I see you've picked up Izuku's mumbling habits. Relax, Yagi, I'm just teasing you. They've always admired you, remember. Besides, they've both occasionally slipped on calling you Uncle Toshi in my house. All Might slowly lifted his head. I had no idea. You're not mad. Shepard stopped typing and gave him a very confused face. Why would I be mad at the fact that my kids have an additional parental figure to look up to? The same parent that managed to calm them down in the USJ incident. The very same parent who gave them a few words of encouragement that helped them out before I woke up. Shepard started to type on his laptop. If I had a list of people I'd trust my sons with, you'd be at the very top of that list, Yagi. You've kept your promise to never break their trust. That's all I could ever ask for. Shepard, all the competitors had gathered up as it was time to announce the winners of the previous event and who would go on. Team Bakugo first place, Team Todoroki second place, Team Kendo third place, Team Shinso fourth place. Midnight spoke, silencing the crowd. To all the teams that made it, congratulations. Now that we are left with only 16 competitors, we can begin the final round. One-on-one battles. The screen began. Midnight had all the competitors' names as they were all randomized into different brackets. The results of the first round were soon revealed. Round 1, Izuku Midoriya vs Ibara Shizaki. Round 2, Shinso Hitoshi vs Mei Hatsume. Round 3, Shoto Todoroki vs Hantasiro. Round 4, Denki Kaminari vs Tenya Ida. Round 5, Momo Yaoyorozu vs Itsuka Kendo. Round 6, Mina Ashido vs Fumikage Takoyami. Round 7, Ijiro Kirishima vs Tetsu. Round 8, Katsuki Bakugo vs Ochako Uraraka. Izuku began to brainstorm for his match. He more so questioned how much of OFA power he could safely use. He wanted to make sure he wouldn't overdo it so early. But as he looked closely at the brackets, it eventually dawned on him. He and Katsuki were on opposite ends of the boards. Katsuki stood right next to Izuku. If you and I want to fight, we have to make it to the finals. Yeah, odd how things play out, huh? Both knew the idea of fighting each other today would mean more than usual. They'd fought countless times against, but not on national TV. And certainly not in front of various agents trying to scout them for their future. Round 1, Izuku Midoriya vs Ibara Shizaki. The first match was off to a start. The battle proved a bit challenging for Izuku, mostly because range attacks had always been his one weakness when it came to using OFA. And Shizaki's vines were the perfect counter to Izuku's fighting. He couldn't get close or risk being ensnared, as that would result in him losing. Whatever limit there was to her vines, it wasn't showing as she kept up the assault. Thankfully, Izuku was able to easily dodge through all of her moves, but he'd realize he couldn't waste any more time. Guess I've seen enough of your quirk to analyze it for later, Izuku said as he stood his ground. Large vines approaching his way. He generated power in the tip of his fingers and caused a snap. A strong blast of wind shredded through Shizaki vines. The force was also enough to send her back out of bounds. Last week, how you want me to show you how to better aim at things? Katsuki said. Yeah, when I threw the ball for the assessment test, it got me thinking, what if I could make that into a technique that sends a force of air at my opponent? Right, but you know they wouldn't have the same power as your normal punches and kicks. Izuku smiled. No, but it would get rid of my main weakness, long range. Unless you think you're not up to it, Kaken. Bakugo gave him a smirk. You wish. There's nothing I can't do, Deku. Just know that I'll always have better aim than you do, little bro. Thanks to Katsuki, Izuku now has a much greater control at his aim. Air Force. With a flick of a finger, he can send small shockwaves of air at his opponent. While not as strong as his standard attacks, it provides Izuku with two advantages. One is a long-range attack, and second is that this technique causes little to no backlash to his body, even at 15%. Izuku Midoriya advances to the next round. Midnight exclaimed with enthusiasm. Shizaki got up and dusted herself up. Most impressive, Midoriya. You countered my attacks with one move. Izuku smiled. Thanks, your vines definitely gave me a good workout for a minute. I take it no one in Class 1B has any ranged attacks. She shook her head. You probably weren't used to facing a ranged attacker then. Suppose that gave me the advantage. I hadn't thought of that until now. Thank you, Midoriya. She bowed as she walked off the stage. Round 2, Shinso Hitoshi vs Mei Hatsume. Begin. You remember that favor you owe me, right? Hatsume asked. Yeah, just do what you gotta do. That item has been a huge help, BTW. Shinso said, knowing what was about to happen. Excellent time to test my babies. Wait, why is Shinso covered in support items? And when did this girl get a speaker? Better yet, who even approved of all of this? Aizawa asked. Present Mike whistled nonsense-like. Aizawa immediately threw another book at him. For the next 15 minutes, Hatsume used Shinso to display all the various support items at her disposal. Using her quirk, she's able to spot all the representatives of the support company. She soon turned the battle into a commercial for her support items. The odd thing is Shinso never once complained but was fully supportive of the idea. As it happened, Shinso had talked to Aizawa about a way to help use his quirk better. He'd informed him that he's trying to get people to fall more easily for his quirk. Loudspeakers and megaphones weren't a support item that could be used as they cancel out the effect of his quirk, unfortunately. They enlisted Power Loader's help, but it was ultimately the idea of a young and bright student Mei Hatsume to use plates to help with his vocalization. While it's still a prototype, they were able to recreate a small mask to use, and the results spoke for themselves as it definitely helped Shinso. After 15 minutes, Hatsume figured it was enough and stepped out of bounds. Shinso is the winner and will advance to the next round, Midnight announced, cracking her whip. Shinso took off all the gear as he began to walk away. Consider us even, but thanks again for that prototype. She waved at him. Ah, please, you already know I've got some improvements on that little item. Just wait until I give you an upgrade. Hasu City, 17 heroes had already fallen by his blade. 17 people who had the nerve to refer to themselves as heroes. And he wasn't going to stop anytime soon. His next target was already in his sights. Ingenium. The man licked his knives. Your time will soon end. Shoto, father. Shoto was making his way to begin his match with Zero, or at least he was until he came across his father, the number 2 hero Endeavor. Silence filled the hallway as they both stared each other down. Having enough, Shoto started to walk past him. Your performance has been less than acceptable. Twice you failed to make it into first place. If you've only used the power that your left side provides, you'd have had a far greater advantage. Endeavor had his arms crossed over his chest. The flame of his body flickered as he looked down at his son that continued to ignore him. Nothing to say. Very well, whether you like it or not, you will use that left side of yours. It's only a matter of time before you finally accept it. Shoto was fuming. Whether he likes it or not. No, hell no. He wasn't going to give him that satisfaction of using his father's fire. All his life, that fire of his is nothing but a curse. If he could rip the blood out of his veins, he would gladly do so. Anything to make sure Shoto didn't have anything in common with Endeavor. Round 3, Shoto Todoroki versus Hanta Zero. Shoto had a look of pure rage as he was in the arena. He was ignoring Midnight's introduction speech and didn't even register that the match had started. Well, my chances of beating you are 0. Too bad I've never been good at math. Immediately, Zero used his quirk to bind Shoto in the hopes of pushing out of bounds. Whether you like it or not, you will use that left side of yours. Whether you like it or not, you will use that left side of yours. Whether you like it or not, you will use that left side of yours. Apologies. Within an instant, Shoto used his quirk to send a massive glacier at Zero. Everyone had a look of pure shock as the glacier far outstretched over top of the arena. The heroes outside the stadium could see a large formation of ice. The crowd had now gone completely silent. Class 1 and B had flabbergasted looks. Even Katsuki and Midoriya were surprised at how much energy Todoroki released. Aizawa and Mike were dumbfounded at the raw power that was displayed. The UA teachers watching had their jaws hit the floor. Endeavor only scoffed as he made his way back inside the stadium. Shifter, however, was the only one who hadn't been surprised at seeing Shoto's raw display of power. Rather, he had a look of concern for Shoto. Zero, can you move? Midnight asked as she herself had been half encased in ice. Oof, he said, shivering. Shoto Todoroki advances. Shoto would start to use his fire to melt away the ice. I'm sorry, I was angry. Oh, okay, as long as you know you're sorry. As the ice began to melt and the arena was being fixed, Class 1 didn't know what to even make of what had just happened. The students that couldn't participate had a small sigh of relief at the fact that they didn't have to fight Todoroki. They were all content to watch from afar, but a few started to think, Izuku may potentially have to fight Todoroki. And they all remembered that declaration of war not too long ago. Oh boy, Shoto was one of the few that could actively keep up with Katsuki and Midoriya, and while they were limited to sparring in school, they weren't in school. This was gonna be one hell of a sports festival to remember. So either Ida or Kaminari is gonna have to face Shoto. Well, glad it's not me, Mina jokingly said, trying to ease the tension. Kirishima could only laugh. Yeah, I kinda feel sorry for them. To be fair, Class 1 does have 3 powerhouses, although Uraraka is gonna have to face one of them. Uraraka wasn't necessarily afraid of fighting Bakugo. If anything, she was actually determined for the match. She's seen how strong he and Izuku were, and her sparring lessons with them has definitely given her a huge confidence boost in her abilities. Fighting alongside both of them definitely improved her resolve to not back down. Oh, don't worry, I'll try not to embarrass him in front of Izuku, she teasingly said. Bakugo glanced back at her "I'll kill you" round cheeks. She happily gave him the bird. All of Class 1 slowly scooted away from her as they'd rather not deal with the wrath of Katsuki Bakugo. Uraraka didn't show an ounce of fear as she stared Katsuki down. His only response was a tusk as he got up and made his way of the bleachers. She laughed as he left. Todoroki isn't the only one who knows how to declare war on someone. Izuku couldn't help but laugh just a bit. Uraraka had a sense of determination in her. He was gonna cheer for his brother, but he also wanted to cheer for her too. He'll admit he was looking forward to seeing those two duke it out. But something else was also on his mind, the way Todoroki looked. It was like he was a completely different person. And that outburst. Shoto was exceptionally good at controlling his ice. He started to wonder what could have caused this. He began to write down on his notebook and going to Shoto's page, but saw that his father's handwriting on one page. Help him if you can. Round 4, Denki Kaminari versus Tenya Ida. Quite a matchup. Kaminari was one of the few that struggled a bit at the start of school. Ida was a very by-the-book kind of person. Total opposites as far as anyone could tell. Ida's speed and larger bulk gave him the advantage for the most part. But Kaminari had one thing up his sleeve. His ingenuity. His quirk was perfect for defense given how anyone who came close would receive a strong jolt to their body. This meant that while Ida could technically rush Hush, he'd have to do so at top speed as Kaminari sliding would immediately put Ida out of commission. It was ultimately a battle of whose quirk give out as even Ida's engines would run out. Kaminari's main focus was his quirk, something Shifter was definitely trying to teach him not to rely too much on, especially since if he goes over his limit he'd end up having to be saved by someone else on the field. So slowly he's been getting him to learn defensive stances, in particular Judo and Muay Thai. He's gotten the basics down, but it's his ability to mix using it in conjunction with his quirk that definitely let Shifter know he was starting to get on the right track for fighting. Ida was a rather easy one to teach. A few lessons in Taekwondo and Capoeira were all Shifter needed to get a better understanding of Ida's fighting style. While he was fast, he failed to think outside the box. Because of that, his moves were too basic, and eventually his enemies would be able to adapt to his fighting style. Their match mostly involved Kaminari dodging and avoids Ida kicks. He was keeping his quirk's voltage down to a basic minimum. As the battle kept on going, Shifter's predictions were true. Ida's movements were unfortunately too basic. Kaminari managed to catch on and hit Ida with a decent charge of lightning. This definitely caught him off guard. He could tell his engines were starting to take their toll, especially given how he'd use his secret move in the cavalry battle. So he took a gamble. Rushing at Kaminari as fast as he could, he grabbed Kaminari and began to drag him to the out-of-bounds line. Ida was getting shocked, but he was fighting through the pain, but he used his last bit of energy to toss Kaminari out of bounds. Ida then collapsed as the shock took his toll on his body. A good match from Tenya Ida and Denki Kaminari, everyone. The first half of the one-on-ones has been complete. Now it's time to move on to the second half. Mike announced, his voice booming loud for everyone to hear. Hawks had just finished his rotation for patrol. He couldn't help but be impressed by how well Shifter has organized all this. First off, having the rescue heroes and the police team up was a damn good idea. Hawks knew just how many cases these two organizations have had to do together, so already their teamwork was spot on. Second, ensuring that there was at least 2 combat quirk specialists in each team was also a surefire way to ensure the pros would be ready in case a villain chose to attack. And third, having heroes 3-5 seemed to boost morale. Hawks was by no means a leader, and he wasn't much of a teacher either, but looking at the sports festival and all the potential recruits it did gave him a few ideas on maybe scouting out for interns. He'd made his way back to the booth as it was about to be Mariko's turn to start her patrol. "So what's the score so far?" Rumi asking as he sat next to her. Well, the previous match was against 2 girls. One can enlarge her hands while the other could create things out of her body. Seems like Handy over there knew the basics in fighting close up. But Ponytail, gotta admit her skills in Bukujutsu are pretty good. She stood up stretching, but seems like someone taught that girl good as she managed to beat Handy Girl. He sat down as she explained, "It's rare for you to take an interest in these kinds of things. I can't remember the last time you even had a sidekick, much less an intern to teach. You're thinking of taking those 2 under your wing." She gave him a raised eyebrow look. "God, Keigo, you're terrible with those puns. Never saw myself as a teacher. Plus, I've always hated big events like these." She began to walk to the door. "Besides, even if I did teach, hardly anyone can up with me. You and Shifter are one of the few that can." She left to start her patrol. So it's true, Shifter did convince her to come by fighting. He was surprised to find out he matched her speed. He was sure Mariko would be bored out of her mind, but that fact that she had even bothered to see this through garnered Hawk's interest. Hawks put his feet on the coffee table in front of him, looked at the scoreboard. Mina Ashido versus Fumikage Takoyami. For the most part, Mina was displaying incredible feats of acrobatic, and her usage of her quirk to slide through the arena was a decent tactic. But anytime she tried to get in close, however, her opponent would easily counter with his quirk. He'll admit Takoyami had a strong quirk. Long range is his specialty by the looks of it, and he's doing well to keep the offense. Eventually, he managed to defeat his opponent and move on to the next round. Takoyami: wonder if your next match will be as easy. Round 7, Eijiro Kirishima vs Tetsu. When an unstoppable force comes across an immovable object, that is the best way to summarize this battle. Two students with durability quirks, and by the looks of it both of them could hit just as hard. They were both tanking each other's blows, and no matter how hard one hit, the other would hit back harder. Eijiro was definitely starting to pan. He could also see Tetsu was in the same state as he was. Damn, as much as a struggle, Kirishima couldn't help but smile. This is exactly why he came here, to test his limits and use what he learned. I notice some of your moves tend to have a small mix of MMA fighting style. Kirishima, you've been taught, haven't you? Shepard asked as he was supervising his training. Oh yes, sensei, I've always loved seeing that sport. I did take a few lessons on the side, but I could only afford the basics classes. He sheepishly looked away. Besides, all the other students in those classes were better than me, so honestly I don't think I'm that good. Shepard gave Kirishima a small punch to his chest. Well, I'll be the judge and teacher of that. I'd be more than happy to teach you the advanced set. He took off his jacket and popped his neck. It was the first time Eijiro saw him without his jacket, and his sensei was built like Tom Hardy. And not that good. I beg to differ, kid. I see a lot potential growth in you. Don't worry, I'll make you a manly protector and fighter. Kirishima couldn't help but smile and get a bit teary-eyed. Shepard sensei, you're so manly, thank you. Kirishima went to hug him, but Shepard immediately flipped him on his back. Expect the unexpected, kid. What followed next was Shifter teaching Kirishima some far more technical holds and how to counter anyone trying to break out of those holds. By the end of the session, Kirishima was beat and exhausted. He was taken aback at just how versatile Shepard was in fighting, but he couldn't help but have a big toothy grin. Shifter stood over him and offered him a bottle of water. Take a break, kid. I'll email you some videos on a few more holds. Remember, always use what you've learned. As Tetsu began to charge at him, Kirishima readied himself. Just as he was tackled, Eijiro latched onto him, wrapping his legs around his body and arms around his neck. Before he knew it, Tetsu was put in a standing guillotine hold, and damn did Kirishima have that hold on tight. And Tetsu had no clear counter to this. Eijiro's weight and him not holding back on that squeeze, in addition to already being worn out from their constant battle, was too much. All right, I give, Tetsu said. Kirishima let go as both of them collapsed on the ground. But just as Tetsu was about to get up, he was meant to see his opponent was offering him a handshake. That was a good fight, man. He laughed and gladly took the handshake. Yeah, you too, man. Oh my, how chivalrous. Midnight said, let's hear it for Eijiro, Kirishima, and Tetsu, everyone. Izuku had been muttering for the duration of that fight. He was writing meticulously on his notebook on updating everyone's performance just now. What broke him out his writing was Ida. Midoriya, you appear to be muttering again. Izuku jumped, having guilty expression like he'd been caught stealing a candy bar in the grocery store. Oh my god, how long was I muttering? I'd say the entire match. You really should relax, especially since you'll be fighting Shinso after this one. Sorry, I always lose myself in quirk analysis, especially when it's the sports festival. Though I guess I should focus on this match, shouldn't I? He put his notebook aside as he looked to see the next match would begin. Hey Midoriya, did you give Uraraka a strategy to help her beat Bakugo? Shinso asked, sitting behind him. Izuku turned his head around. I did offer her one, but she said she wanted to try and beat him on her own. She's not backing down, you gotta respect that. Round 8, Katsuki Bakugo vs Ochako Uraraka. Uraraka never really had a difficult life, to say the least. She's always aspired to do her best in school and was well complimented by her quirk. She's never had to face any form of discrimination, and thankfully she'd avoided the quirkist community altogether. There was one driving force for her to become a hero: her parents. Both would always put her first. They were nothing but supportive her entire life and encouraged her dream to be a hero. Money was always a problem for them, and so she promised herself when she became a hero she'd do everything she could to repay her parents for everything they'd sacrificed for her. Getting into UA was no easy thing. First, her middle school teachers had been shocked at her application to the most prestigious school in Japan. She surely could have had an easier time to be accepted anywhere else, but Ochako was very adamant on not changing her mind. Thankfully, she'd managed to win a scholarship because there was no way she was going to put such a heavy burden on her parents. Unfortunately, she had to move and rent out an apartment due to just how far away her home was from UA. Despite this, she still refused to give up, and with time she got in her dream school. Her time at UA was definitely something she was grateful to. She'd acquired true friends that she could talk to, friends that would further help her pursue her ideas to be a rescue hero. Lately, however, she was at a bit of a crossroads. 13 was her idol, and seeing her teach was a dream come true for Uraraka. But she's been thinking to herself, why shouldn't I learn some way to defend myself? Why shouldn't I have a way to defeat a villain in a fight? Was it because of the USJ or her hanging out with Izuku that helped gotten her into this state of mind? She couldn't for the life of her figure it out, but if this is what it meant to be a hero, then she's definitely got a ways to go. Standing across her was Katsuki Bakugo. He was one of Class 1 top students, and he definitely had the mettle to back that statement up. A few weeks ago she would have been afraid to even fight him, but now there's no doubt in her mind. Oi, round face, I'd ask you to give up or go home, but to be honest I'd rather not insult you as a fighter. So you better not hold anything back. Oh, don't worry Katsuki, I'll give it my all and more. Once the match started, Uraraka charged at Katsuki, but he blew her away with an explosion. But Uraraka had charged at him again, so he countered her again by blowing her away. But she kept on doing this tactic. Something was off and Katsuki could feel it. She was being damn repetitive. The field had been covered in smoke, but Katsuki could see movement on the side. He sent a blast in that direction, but to his surprise he struck her jacket. Uraraka had appeared behind him and came close to touching him, but he'd sent a blast catapulting her backwards. She stood up again and went back on her assault. You don't back down, do you, round cheeks? It's Uraraka. And absolutely not. As the battle raged on, the people on the stands did not like this aggressive battle. The majority of people began to boo Bakugo for hurting a girl, calling him a bully, abuser, and a villain. Class 1 did not like that at all. By now everyone has had to fight Bakugo one-on-one, and they knew he wouldn't hold back on you. He was the class deputy and was there to help bring out the best in other people in his own aggressive way. Aizawa wasn't going to let this stand any longer. Where is the person responsible for starting this uproar? Are you a pro? Because if you are, I'd suggest you start looking into a different career. The crowd all started to become silent when they heard Eraserhead speak. There was a hint of anger in his voice. You really think Bakugo wouldn't give it his all in a fight? You really think he'd underestimate his opponent in this battle? As his teacher, I can confidently inform you, he goes at everything 100%. Katsuki made a statement earlier, and by the looks of it, he's going to stand by that statement. The many boos now faded as the crowd began to become silent. But Aizawa was far from down. He sees Uraraka as someone worthy of fighting. And to all of you who think she's frail because she's a girl, you all need a hard wake-up call. There are plenty of great female heroes out there who are by no means weak or fragile. Midnight, 13, Maruko, Recovery Girl, and Ryukyu, the list goes on, so by all means continue to insult the students who are working hard to achieve their dreams at being a pro. They've already proved to have a better sense of character than the majority of people that cause these biased insults. And boy did that shut everyone up. Mike was surprised but gave him a thumbs up. Midnight could only smile with pride at that statement. Shifter in the booth had one hell of a smile. That's one of my two best friends right there, Yagi. Katsuki had ignored all the insults being thrown at him. He stood by his opening statement. He was gonna win this damn thing. Stay down, round cheeks, Bakugo adamantly said as Uraraka laid down on the ground, bruised and out of strength. Uraraka refused to stand down. Thank you, Bakugo, for not underestimating me and not letting your guard down. Wiping the sweat from her forehead, she grinned. She then placed her hand together. Tisk, as if I'd ever let my guard down. He then heard something from above as she turned his head up. And there it was, her plan all along. Thousands of rocks began to crash down. Uraraka wasn't going to let this opportunity slide. She rushed in. She only had to touch him once and she'd win. But when she saw Katsuki's expression, he was smiling. Hell yeah. Stretching his arms up towards the sky, he let loose. With one blast, he'd managed to destroy all the rocks that had been coming down his way. His wrist gave a small twitch, but it wasn't anything he couldn't fight off. Small pebbles drifted towards the ground, and Uraraka had been blasted far away, almost to the edge of the arena. Katsuki flexed his hands, a technique to help alleviate the pain, as he grinned at Uraraka. Not a bad tactic, but Bakugo was far from done. All right, guess it's time to get serious then, Uraraka. As Katsuki rushed forward, he saw Uraraka collapse down on the ground. Her strategy that she worked hard on, with one move, was beaten down. Was it not enough? She thought to herself. Was she just in over her head? Maybe she was, but that she still refused to go down without a fight. She got up and stumbled. As Bakugo began to run to her, Uraraka couldn't hold it anymore and her body gave out. Despite this, she still tried her best to get up, but her vision was beginning to fade. Darkness overcame her as she passed out. Midnight approached her, signaling Bakugo to stand down. Bakugo wins by knockout. Katsuki watched as Uraraka was being hauled onto a stretcher. He paused for a brief moment as he flexed his hands a bit. He shook his head and walked away. AFO Warehouse, 7 miles from Jaku General Hospital. AFO had been listening in on the sports festival. He had been writing down the name of any potential quirks to add for his collection. His interest, however, was immediately shifted when he saw a boy named Izuku Midori. That quirk, that power, it was without a doubt OFA. He could never forget that feeling of facing it in combat for decades. The feeling of facing All Might all those years ago. The very face that haunted him as he lost half his face has been blown off. By all accounts he should be death, but having so many quirks has its usefulness. But now in front of him was a boy who had OFA. All Might had found his successor just as AFO had his. For a second, AFO had been overcome with rage. His nemesis continued to find ways to aggravate him. He had planned to wait for All Might to completely lose his power to ensure a perfect victory, but having Izuku on the chessboard, he couldn't let him reach All Might's power. He began to tap his pen on the desk, considering his next move. Shigaraki was still recovering, and the new modifications to his body were still taking time. Kurogiri had been assigned to look for any potential new recruits. He made progress in finding out about the hero killer and about the Yakuza leader. Both were potential candidates to further their cause and use as resourceful pawns. As he was about to continue watching, suddenly the screen had gone black, followed by the lights and power the room he was in also going black. AFO, however, was more so surprised than worried. Quirk combination, sonic echo, heartbeat, power amplification. Losing his eyes, AFO was in desperate need of a quirk that would allow him to see. Sonic echo could help him sense the vibrations of his surroundings, while heartbeat allowed him to sense the heartbeat of any living thing within a 1-mile radius. Power amplification increased the range to 5 miles. As it stands, the only 2 living beings were himself and Kurogiri. So what could have caused this power outage? Kurogiri had entered the room. Master, it seems our location has been breached. AFO was still unfazed. Yes, how fortunate that my life support runs on its own separate power. He stood up and Kurogiri immediately bowed on one knee. Warp us to one of the other warehouses. I have much to think about. Before Kurogiri could react, he was shot with a tranquilizer dart by an unknown enemy. AFO turned and felt the vibrations make out 3 black-colored robots. They were found by mere automatons. Rivet stab. Sharp black tendrils with red crack lines had appeared from the tips to AFO hands and skewered the 3 robots to pieces. Robots. Has he truly been forgotten so much that mere pieces of metal were sent to find him? A better question is, how did they find him at all? He's been incognito for 6 years, and no one had even come close to finding so much as a whisper about him. Before AFO could think further, he could feel the robots starting to repair themselves, slowly putting themselves back together piece by piece. There could only be on-answer nanotechnology, he'd whispered, but only the US has access to that sort of gear. And far as he knew, they haven't made any form of partnerships with Japan, so how? The second of realization would end up costing AFO. 2 of the robots had lunged onto him. While they were still in self-repair, the lights on their eyes were binging to blink a yellow color deactivate. Both robot mannequins said in unison as they sent a small electric pulse to cancel out AFO life support system. AFO breathing immediately grew heavy as the many tubes and masks that had been keeping him together had shut down. How irritating. Bones in the shape of spears shot out from AFO body, puncturing the mannequins still clinging onto him, in combination with rivet stab. Now he only had one last robot to deal with, but for some reason it hadn't moved an inch. AFO prepared to destroy it when a beating noise could be heard. The last robot's eyes blinked red as it self-destructed, blowing the room to shreds. Jaku General Hospital's secret basement. Dr. Garaki had been continuing experimenting with the Namu. Replicating one from the USJ had been harder to do, so he moved to more foot soldier-like Namu. They had the compatibility to a basic villain, but quantity over quality. Just then one of Kurogiri portals had opened. He hadn't expected him, and he most certainly didn't expect to see AFO to personally appear from that portal carrying the unconscious body of Kurogiri. Get me plugged into your medical machines now, doctor. AFO tone was filled with a venom of pure anger. His body had been caught in the explosion and hadn't have enough time to counter it. Now his face has been more damaged as it was covered in second-degree burns. His suit had been burned as well. Small shrapnels of metal had dug deep into his skin. He sat down as the doctor attended his injuries. In all his years, no one has come close to finding any of their warehouses. And not only were they found, but they had an effective counter. It truly infuriated AFO as he knew exactly who was behind all this. Twice he was bested. One slip-up he could let go, but 2 times. Well done, Anton Shepard, you've proven yourself to be a thorn in my side. Back at the sports festival, when Shepard shot Shigaraki in the jaw, the bullet was still inside of him. What no one knew is that Shifter makes sure to put small tracking devices on each his bullet. They can monitor a vital sign and location. As far as he knew, Shigaraki was dead, but for some reason the tracker had read that his vitals were alive. Once Shifter was back in his feet, he took a gamble and went to its location. What he didn't expect was that it led him to the Jaku General Hospital. He did some research, a perfectly normal hospital by the looks of it. Several well-respected staff members, good doctors, and a good reputation for being known to save the lives of many patients that were previously thought impossible to save. Nothing added up. That hospital was clean as it could be. He'd considered doing an interior search but didn't want to risk being caught. Besides, he did promise Recovery Girl he wouldn't do active field work until after the sports festival. But she never forbade him from letting him use his training robots for a bit of espionage. As mannequins were more than just used for training, as they had cloaking technology in them, making them useful for reconnaissance missions. They were outfitted with tranquilizer darts and a live camera footage and could also send a small electrical pulse that disrupts any electronics besides themselves. A final safety measure, a self-destruct mode to ensure the nanotechnology didn't fall on the wrong hands. For the next few days, Shifter sent 3 robots to look for anything in near the hospital. The gamble paid off as they'd found a warehouse 7 miles near the hospital. What he found there, he truly didn't prepare for it. Shepard had watched the video from his end go dark. He replayed the video again to make sure he wasn't going crazy. Kurogiri he'd recognized, but this man in a suit, he knew nothing about him at first. But when he saw him use multiple quirks, he dreadfully realized who he was dealing with. Showing All Might the video for confirmation only confirmed it. Shifter could tell from his face he was not happy in any regard. Slowly bulking up, his steams could be seen from his body. Silence has filled the room completely. Only the noise of the crowd from outside could be heard, and even then it didn't do much to muffle the anger that was radiating through Yagi. He's alive. Yagi AFO is alive, Shepard said, standing up and walking to his side. Yes, he is. Couldn't even finish the job all those years ago. Clenching his fist, he'd powered down as he collected himself. What should we do now? Now we start planning and preparing for his eventual return. I'll make sure you don't fight him alone. Putting a hand on Yaga's shoulder. I appreciate that, but what about your son? I've no doubt he'll eventually find out about him being my successor, Yagi had asked in a very grim tone. Izuku wasn't ready, and he wasn't sure if it was even a good idea to bring up that subject with Shepard. I'll worry about my kid. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. He inhaled a deep breath before letting it out, but regretfully I may have to increase his training sooner than expected as a small precaution. Yagi looked at him sorrowfully. He also shared the opinion that Izuku should grow up like a normal teenager. He shouldn't be forced into becoming a soldier or losing his spark or smile to be a hero. But he was still his mentor, and he was going to ensure Midoriya would have the strength to fight back against AFO. But right now, both he and Anton agreed until they knew more to keep this information between themselves. Besides, it's not just Izuku but also Bakugo. They were a package deal, and he could already tell Katsuki would fight alongside Izuku in any situation. You know I'll protect both of them with my life, Anton. That's a promise to you. Anton bowed to him as he silently went back to work. He'd unintentionally made the first move in this upcoming storm. He can only pray he made the right one. Izuku and Shinso were in the arena. The next part of the tournament was about to begin, both standing in opposite ends from each other. Midoriya, I've got a favor to ask you.